Chapter 1023. As the tide of blood sense approached, the resentment chi in the air became even more oppressive. Ghostly cries of unknown origin resounded in the surroundings. Ning Fan expanded his protective golden light to 1 zhang and walked calmly on the surface of the frozen sea. The resentment chi did not affect him at all. He could clearly see the general situation of this place. He could even guess the location of the center of the tide. After determining the location of the center of the tide, Ning Fan went to the east of the sea and sat in a meditative position, waiting for the arrival of the tide. 6 hours passed just like that. The sea of blood suddenly showed signs of melting. The waves under the layer of ice started to flow again. The resentment chi spread like a thick fog, covering the entire surface of the sea in a hazy manner. In the midst of the haze, some broken images would appear in the mist from time to time like a mirage. All of them were the scenes of enlightened being Gu Hua before his death. It's here. The power of the tide of blood sense will double every 2 hours. Even with our combined strength, we can only last for 8 hours in the tide. At that time, the memories related to the tribulation will appear. This vast expanse butterfly wants to imprint the memories of the tribulation by sealing its cultivation base. It's as difficult as ascending to the heavens. At the bottom of the deep sea, the main demon soul of the blood wasp struggled to resist the rising resentment chi in the surroundings while smiling coldly. She was really looking forward to seeing Ning Fan suffer a setback under the tide. Moreover, in the eyes of the main demon soul of the blood wasp, Ning Fan might not even be able to last for 2 hours in the tide and would definitely be severely injured. Unfortunately, she was destined to be disappointed. With the protection of the God-exterminating shield, Ning Fan treated the resentment chi as if it was child's play. He was not injured at all, and the resentment chi did not even get close to his body. As a blood-red wave rushed over from the boundless sea surface, deafening sounds of waves crashing against each other could be heard. The wave was getting closer and closer to Ning Fan. Surprisingly, it was a 100 zhang tall giant wave. It roared and slammed down on the place where Ning Fan was sitting. The resentment chi that this 100 zhang tall giant wave was extremely terrifying. If one were to compare it to mortals, one would need to slaughter tens of thousands of mortals on cultivation planets in order to accumulate such a huge amount of resentment chi. It was already enough to make some newly advanced immortal venerables change their expressions. However, Ning Fan was calm in dealing with it. He casually waved his hand and shot out hundreds of golden rays at the gigantic wave in an instant. The rays dispersed the momentum of the gigantic wave. Then, the gigantic wave was stopped in midair as if it had stopped moving. It was extremely strange. This kid actually managed to negate the momentum of the giant wave's advance and fall, causing the giant wave to stop in midair. What kind of profound understanding of the world's momentum is needed to be able to do this? At the bottom of the deep sea, the main and second demon souls of the blood wasp were both shocked. Even the 100 Flowers Emperor in the inner hall raised his eyebrows slightly, as if he was surprised. Ning Fan looked thoughtfully at the still waves. The memories of Taoist Master Gu Hua's tribulation have been preserved to this day because of the deep resentment. It is covered in resentment, unchanging over the years. These memories are too fragmented. They are like a complete book that has been torn into countless pages. Moreover, each page has been broken into countless pieces. It's too troublesome to record these fragmented memories. Even if I do record them, I can only see scenes that cannot be connected together. It's better to directly collect the resentment chi in this place and slowly study the various memories in the resentment chi in the future. Perhaps I can see the complete version from them. These resentment chi can also be considered as one of the treasures in the treasury. After all, the 100 Flowers Emperor has already said that if I take them away, she certainly won't have anything to say. Having made up his mind, Ning Fan actually waved his sleeve and directly kept the still giant wave into his sleeve. This kid actually took away the giant wave that was formed by the resentment chi. The two ladies at the bottom of the deep sea were extremely astonished. With their understanding of the world's momentum, they were far from being able to make the giant wave stop in midair and allow it to be collected freely. When facing the onslaught of the giant wave, the only thing they could do was to avoid it. However, Ning Fan was able to do it. His techniques had already gone beyond their imagination. Obviously, he was not someone that ordinary immortal venerables from the ancient times could compare to. A mere external cultivator actually had such powerful techniques. The secret character of force of the eastern heavens. No, I'm afraid this kid has also mastered the prestige character art. Otherwise, it's impossible for him to be so calm when facing my aura force that day. I have underestimated this kid. Perhaps this kid doesn't even need to consume the releasing cold dew to obtain the spring water of the southern sea. There's no need for me to completely give up on this hope. Ever since Ning Fan entered the treasury, the 100 Flowers Emperor finally revealed a satisfied smile for the first time. The gloominess on her face had been swept away. Then, as if she thought of something, her eyes flashed with the light of calculation. Even after imprisoning the blood wasps for so many years, they still could not verify anything. Perhaps, if the memories of the ancient flower fall into Ning Fan's hands, he might be able to uncover some secrets. Ning Fan used the secret character of force to neutralize the force of the incoming tidal waves and kept them away one after another. This state of calmness lasted for 6 hours. Finally, it began to feel a little strenuous. At this moment, the density of the resentment chi in the tidal waves had already increased by a few times. Moreover, it was still showing signs of increasing as time passed. From the 18th hour onwards, Ning Fan had no choice but to activate his golden protective light to its limit. When the 18th hour arrived, Ning Fan's protective golden light had already been pressured by the surrounding resentment chi to the point that it had sunk a little. If he withdraws the protective golden light at this moment, Ning Fan firmly believed that he would be directly turned into a pool of blood by the resentment chi. Fortunately, the tidal waves were coming to an end. Otherwise, Ning Fan did not have the confidence to hold on for a few more hours with his sealed cultivation base. However, this was already enough to make the two ladies of the deep sea feel astonished. As the last wave of the tidal waves passed, Ning Fan withdrew the protective golden light and left calmly. There was now a palm-sized blood-red crystal in his sleeve. If one were to listen to it from a close distance, they would be able to hear the cries of ghosts and the sound of waves crashing against the shore from the crystal. It was the condensation of the resentment chi that he had collected from the blood-sense tidal waves. After chanting an incantation, a formation light instantly appeared in the air. It wrapped Ning Fan up and teleported him out of the treasure vault. The crowd outside the treasure vault had already become impatient from the wait. Just as they were discussing among themselves, Ning Fan's sudden appearance made everyone fall into silence. Each of them had their own thoughts. This person is finally willing to come out. Since he could stay in the treasure vault for such a long time, his abilities must be strong. We can't underestimate him. If we meet him in the second round, we mustn't provoke him too much. There were many people who were wary of Ning Fan. This person has actually stayed in the treasure vault for such a long time. I wonder what kind of benefits he has obtained. Of course, there were also greedy cultivators. However, because they were wary of Ning Fan's strength, they restrained their thoughts. After Ning Fan came out, the young men with flesh wings who led the way were finally willing to bring everyone back to the guest rooms. Those cultivators who had obtained benefits in the treasure vault began to get busy as soon as they returned to the guest rooms. Ning Fan was no exception. He had indeed obtained quite a lot of good items in the treasure vault this time. For example, that drop of venom which could kill an immortal venerated poison immortal of the 3 desolate lands. Ning Fan did not plan to use it to kill people. Instead, he planned to consume it in the future when he was strong enough to increase his poison resistance. Another example was the 6th grade Dao spring that filled a river, the huge number of great infernal pill formulas, and the entire orchard that was filled with 1 million years old spiritual fruits. All of these benefits could be considered as a great harvest. There was also that drop of releasing cold dew. Even though Ning Fan did not plan to consume it, he still took it with him. In the end, he did not put it back, of course. There were also the memories of enlightened being Gu Hua's failure in transcending the tribulation. What Ning Fan brought out was not an engraved copy. Instead, it was the complete resentment chi of the emperor's death. It had nearly absorbed all the resentment chi in the entire blood sea. Holding the blood-red resentment crystal in his hand, Ning Fan tried to probe it with his spirit sense bit by bit. Immediately, he felt a piercing pain from the resentment chi in his spirit sense. At the same time, what was reflected in his mind were the fragmented memories of enlightened being Gu Hua's failure in transcending the tribulation. They were still too fragmented. He could not see the entire process of enlightened being Gu Hua's seventh tribulation. He could only see some fragmented images. In the first image, enlightened being Gu Hua was standing above a green lightning sea. He was resisting the lightning attacks of the lightning sea with the power of an innate treasure sword. The second image, however, suddenly changed. It was the scene where enlightened being Gu Hua turned into ashes. Before he died, he was still shouting words like, "I don't believe it." In the third image, it was the scene where enlightened being Gu Hua carefully prepared to transcend the tribulation. In the fourth image, it was the moment when enlightened being Gu Hua fought against the green lightning sea. In the fifth image, it was the scene where enlightened being Gu Hua was admiring the carefree orchid on the main peak of the 100 Flowers Peak. In the sixth image, it was, all of a sudden Ning Fan paused. He rewound his spirit sense a little and looked at the fragmented memories again. The sun was setting in the west and the night breeze was slightly cold. Enlightened being Gu Hua seemed to have a premonition that this tribulation would not be smooth. Thus, he dismissed all the children and stayed on the cliff alone. He looked at the carefree orchids with a solemn expression. "I don't have more than 30% confidence in successfully transcending the seventh tribulation. Logically speaking, I should continue to suppress the tribulation and continue to accumulate my strength, waiting for the moment when I'm more confident. Unfortunately, I can't wait any longer. I want to take a gamble with this tribulation to verify a guess. Perhaps, the answer will make me collapse and make me go crazy. However, I will never believe that this guess is true. Even if it's true, I will use this tribulation as a bait to plot against the mastermind and seize it. It's a pity that I've found a 12th grade Flower King as a protective artifact. Now, I can only retrieve the 11th grade Flower King. I'm afraid the chance of seizing it is lower than I expected. The flower that I planted in the illusory world first lost its life gold chi and then withered. If it wasn't for that, I would have at least a 50% chance of successfully fusing with the 12th grade Flower King. However, if the flower didn't wither, I wouldn't have been able to comprehend it. Therefore, it's hard to say if I succeeded. That was the first grade Flower King that I had placed the deepest hope in my heart. Because of a butterfly, it gained sentience and feelings. However, it died looking at its husband and perished along with the ancient heavenly court. What a pity! Enlightened being Gu Hua displayed his divine ability and 12 light balls flew out from his body. Each of the light balls was a flower that emitted the chi of a monarch. Gradually, 12 thumb-sized women emerged from the 12 light balls. They were sleeping in their respective flower cores. They were the souls of the flowers and all of them were extremely beautiful women. Among them, the soul of a woman who was sleeping on the largest and most illusory flower had an appearance that Ning Fan was very familiar with. "Su Qiuling, you're the only one that's missing." Enlightened being Gu Hua looked at the carefree orchids that were as pale as sickly beauties and sighed softly. The illusory 12th grade flower which carried the image of Su Qiuling instantly faded and disappeared. Only the other 11 grade flowers remained. The scene ended there. Ning Fan's breath stopped for a moment. He watched the scene over and over again. In his soul, there seemed to be a trembling voice that kept colliding with each other. The Flower King had lost its life gold chi and perished along with the ancient heavenly court. The butterfly and the soul of the flower which was exactly the same as Su Qiuling, that appearance was enough to make his soul tremble. The flower, could it be Linger's past life? And the butterfly that was related to the ancient heavenly court in the story was referring to him. Did I have any interaction with Linger in my past life? Ling actually died while looking at her husband in her past life? Was she looking at him while looking at her husband? Ning Fan's expression turned gloomy. He could not tell what he was feeling. In his past life, they had gone through life and death situations together. In this life, they had also held hands together. However, when they first met on the road, they did not know each other. Samsara is like a stranger. Samsara is like a stranger. All of a sudden, Ning Fan understood something. No wonder he was so concerned about the carefree orchid on the 100 Flowers Peak. He always had the feeling that he could not move his eyes away from it. Perhaps, the flower king in Ling-er's past life was this carefree orchid. Only the flower that Ling-er transformed into was worthy for him to take a second look. Carefree orchid, Wangfu orchid, Ning Fan's eyes darkened. He continued to examine the resentment crystal. There were hundreds and thousands of broken scenes inside. However, he skipped all of them that were related to the tribulation. It was difficult to find any scenes related to Su Qiuling. Perhaps at the last moment of enlightened being Gu Hua, Su Qiuling, who represented the carefree orchid flower king, only thought about it once. It was not very important. Thus, it did not appear too much in his memory. However, at this moment, Ning Fan would rather not have those memories related to the tribulation. He would rather have this memory crystal only contain bits and pieces of information related to Su Qiuling. He wanted to know more about her past life. Unfortunately, there was nothing more. After a long time, Ning Fan kept the memory crystal. No one could tell whether he was happy or angry. No one knew what he was thinking about. In the following days, Ning Fan would still appear at the cliff. However, it was no longer to comprehend the ancient devil's abilities. Instead, he was looking at the clusters of pale carefree orchids. It was as if he was looking at the smiling face of her husband who was looking forward to his return across time and space. He could not help but take out the zither that he had not played for a long time and play the Yuren song that Su Qiuling taught him. The melody was not as beautiful as those zither grandmasters. However, there was a kind of emotion that seeped into one's bones. Bit by bit, it was deeply hidden in the zither music. There was also an extremely ethereal Tao aura that appeared on Ning Fan's body. Bit by bit, it increased along with the sound of the zither. That was the chi of samsara. Samsara is like a stranger. Ning Fan saw the past in this 100 Flowers Peak. He saw his past life from the moment he met Su Qiuling. If the first encounter in his past life was the starting point and the second encounter in this life was the ending point, then this moment was the moment when Ning Fan walked from the starting point to the ending point and returned to the starting point. Even though it was not a perfect cultivation of the Tao and it was just a return of the emotional experience, it gave Ning Fan a lot of inspiration. Moreover, that kind of inspiration gave him a real and personal understanding of the word samsara for the first time. Samsara is like a stranger. Ning Fan had already grasped a trace of samsara power when he took the first step of cultivation. However, that trace of samsara power was too little and it was not comprehended by him. Instead, it was comprehended by immortal sovereign Zido who imitated it. Therefore, it could still be used when he took the first step of cultivation. However, it was somewhat useless when he reached the second step of cultivation. However, it was different at this moment. Ning Fan could not tell what he was feeling. However, under the sound of the zither, there was the chi of samsara. It was getting thicker and deeper, making it unfathomable. He did not deliberately amplify the sound of the zither. However, the ethereal sound of the zither seemed to be able to penetrate all the barriers of time and space and enter the ears of every cultivator in the 100 Flowers Peak. Day after day, the sound of the zither continued. Day after day, the sound of the zither became deeper and deeper, giving people an unfathomable feeling. It was as if there was a seed of samsara that had truly sprouted in Ning Fan's Tao heart. Few people knew about it, but it did not mean that no one knew about it. In the past few days, everyone including enlightened being Bai Lu was astounded by the strangeness of Ning Fan's zither sound ability. However, they did not know where the true wonders of the zither sound lay. However, it could not hide it from the two supreme experts in this place. Zhang Yu could naturally see the germination of samsara in Ning Fan's zither sound. Even though it was just a germination, it was something that countless immortal emperors and quasi-saints could only dream of. However, Ning Fan did it. As for the other person who was shocked, it was naturally the 100 Flowers Great Emperor. As an immortal emperor, It was impossible for her to be completely ignorant about the power of samsara. The penetrating power contained in Ning Fan's zither sound was obviously samsara. It was the true samsara that belonged to Ning Fan alone. It was neither an imitation nor borrowing. Perhaps the samsara power in Ning Fan's body was still not strong at the moment. However, as long as he continues to cultivate, this samsara power would eventually become a power that no second-step cultivator would be able to resist. It was a power that belonged to the third step. Someone, write down the zither sound that you heard. The 100 Flowers' great emperor calmly summoned a group of maids and asked them to record the zither sound. However, when these maids were about to write down the zither sound, they realized that the zither sound in their minds was unfamiliar. They kept forgetting it and could not remember anything at all. The 100 Flowers' great emperor could not help but feel a little solemn. She also could not remember any of the notes. It was a strange zither sound that entered her ears and was immediately forgotten. In this way, she was even more certain that Ning Fan had integrated an extremely profound samsara power into his zither sound. While she was feeling astonished, she also had unprecedented confidence in Ning Fan's participation in the second round of the Mausoleum Seizing competition. Reporting to his honor. The Witch of the Sea Witch tribe has replied that she is willing to fight for his honor in the second round of the Mausoleum Seizing competition. However, his honor's reward will be doubled. All of a sudden, a maid entered the inner hall and reported. The 100 Flowers' great emperor's eyes turned slightly gloomy. Then, she calmed down and said to the messenger with a strange smile, "Tell this woman that I can double the reward. However, if she can't get the South Sea spring water, don't blame me for being merciless." That maid excused herself and left. The 100 Flowers' great emperor, on the other hand, shook her head disapprovingly. In the second round of the Mausoleum Seizing competition, Ning Fan should be more than enough. As for the Witch of the Sea Witch tribe, I'll just use her as an insurance. The 100 Flowers' great emperor gently raised her hand and pointed with her finger. A sword light that transmitted sound was suddenly shot out and disappeared in a flash. At the same time, on the cliff of the main peak of the 100 Flowers' great emperor, a sword light that transmitted sound suddenly appeared beside Ning Fan. If I can get the South Sea spring water and nurture enough divine essence pills, I will certainly give you the information you want. I will never go back on my words. As for some of my previous schemes, I hope little friend can forgive me. After everything is done, I will certainly compensate you. She actually had the intention to ease the tension between the two of them. Ning Fan stopped playing the zither. His expression was a little hesitant. Then he sighed softly. There were many disagreements between him and the 100 Flowers' great emperor. However, it was not an irreconcilable enmity. Since the other party was willing to take a step back, he did not plan to pursue the matter any further. After all, the matter regarding the ancient Chaos Great Emperor was more important. After remaining silent for a while, Ning Fan turned his hand and sent a flying sword back. If I can get the information about the sacrificial vessel, all our grudges will be resolved. As long as he could get the information about the sacrificial vessel and save the ancient Chaos Great Emperor, Ning Fan could ignore some schemes. After getting a reply, the 100 Flowers' great emperor immediately felt a little relieved. Although she had a domineering personality, she was also unwilling to provoke a powerful enemy who had just comprehended the samsara realm for no reason. It's still all right for him now. As for his achievements in the future, she did not dare to imagine it in detail. Perhaps he would at least be a quasi-saint realm expert. It's unwise to provoke this person. A few more days passed. Rows of spiritual beast carriages began to move towards Lioli City in the Middle State. Ning Fan naturally planned to move as well. Unfortunately, Zhang Yu and Oh Yangwan could not go with him. Up until now, with the help of Oh Yangwan's 5-colored medicine soul, the Golden Core Realm Pill Refinement Master of the 100 Flowers Peak had already concocted more than 60 divine essence pills. However, this number was still far from the requirement of the 100 Flowers Great Emperor. Perhaps, Oh Yangwan would still have to stay in this place for a period of time. Zhang Yu naturally stayed behind to protect Oh Yangwan. The people she brought along naturally needed to be protected properly. As for Old Wu, he shamelessly insisted on going to the middle state with Ning Fan. He wanted to represent the Tower Wood tribe and the grassland of the southern border to participate in the second round of the mausoleum seizing battle in the middle state. Master, bring Little 8 along with you. Little 8 has obtained a new magic treasure and his abilities have improved tremendously. If he participates in the grand competition in the middle state, he will certainly be able to sweep away all the enemies in front of you for Master. Old Wu was full of confidence. Even if his cultivation base was sealed, he was confident that he would be able to face an ancient immortal venerate head-on just by relying on his improved dark luck ability. If his cultivation base is unsealed, he also has the confidence to fight against an ancient immortal king who has undergone 3 tribulations. With the Emperor Jade Luck Crown, his strength had improved tremendously. He was no longer the Old Wu that he used to be. According to the rules that I understand, you didn't participate in the first round of the mausoleum seizing battle. It seems like you are not qualified to represent the Tower Wood in the second round. I think it's better for you to stay here. There's no need for you to go with me. Ning Fan gave Old Wu a meaningful look. What? I am not qualified to participate in the second round. Even if I can't participate in the second round of the mausoleum seizing battle, Little 8 also wants to follow Master to this Lioli city. Little 8's long-cherished wish is to follow Master. What I want is not to be rewarded by Master but to be able to see Master's handsome face every day when I open my eyes. Every day when I take a deep breath, I can smell Master's fragrance. Every day. Ning Fan knitted his brows and felt a chill run down his spine. He began to suspect that this Old Wu had a sexual interest in men. Subconsciously, he moved a few feet away from Old Wu. Of course, he also suspected that Old Wu had other motives for wanting to go to Lioli City so urgently recently. This fellow had been searching the treasure-searching tortoise countless times to the west of the middle state. Lioli City is just to the west of the middle state. Could it be that there is something here that Old Wu desperately wants to obtain? Ning Fan had to admit that he knew Old Wu too well. According to the feedback from the treasure-searching tortoise, there was really something in the direction of Lioli City in the middle state that made Old Wu salivate. That was why he was eager to follow Ning Fan to Lioli City. As for helping Ning Fan to participate in the second round of the mausoleum seizing battle, it doesn't matter whether he can participate or not. The Old Wu was not a good person. Why should he help the Tower Wood tribe to participate in the second round of the mausoleum seizing battle? If he had the time, he would rather go and deceive the natives of the middle state. There were a lot of fools in the Debay clan. He could obtain a lot of benefits just by deceiving and scaring them. However, compared to that item, ordinary benefits seemed to be overshadowed. Forget it. I will bring you along for this trip. Ning Fan smiled meaningfully. Old Wu suddenly shuddered. Did this fiend see through something? Last time when he drowned the realm bottle with water, he also smiled like this. This time, let's go. A carriage of spiritual beasts carried Ning Fan, Duo Lan and Old Wu towards the extreme west of the middle state. This time, Old Wu was the one driving the carriage while Ning Fan and Duo Lan stayed in the carriage. Ning Fan did not waste any time during the journey. Along the way, he was sorting out the insights he had gained from the ancient devil and the previous round of samsara. What is samsara? Ning Fan still had no idea. He just vaguely felt that after the incident with Su Qiuling, a seed seemed to have been planted in his heart. When he uses the samsara power, the feeling he got was somewhat different from before. The purplish golden wind mist power twined around his fingertips like an obedient snake. This was once immortal Sovereign Zido's samsara comprehension. Today, however, it seemed to be different. It was as if he had a unique comprehension that belonged to him. Compared to when I was in the 100 Flowers Peak, I seemed to be very different. However, every time he wanted to meditate and comprehend the Tao rhythm of samsara, he would be interrupted by Old Wu's impromptu singing along the way. His singing was so horrible that one could not bear to look at it. It was an incomparably cheerful singing. Even with Ning Fan's firm Tao heart, he still frowned when he heard the singing. The singing of Senior's subordinate is really special. Duo Lan tried her best to describe it in a euphemistic manner and smiled helplessly. It's indeed special. It's really a waste that this fellow doesn't cultivate devil sound type divine abilities. His singing actually carries the innate power of ridicule. Ning Fan also shook his head helplessly. However, he did not stop Old Wu from singing. It's fine if it's unpleasant to listen to. I'll just treat it as training my state of mind. Unexpectedly, Old Wu heard everything that was said in the carriage and secretly memorized Ning Fan's words. When my master was still alive, he also said that I have an innate devil sound talent. He said that I'm tone deaf, which is 1 in 100,000 people. In the past, I just thought that my master was mocking me. Now, even the fiend said the same thing. Could it be that I really have this kind of talent? I might as well develop a devil roar technique that incorporates my dark luck divine ability. Hence, when Old Wu was singing, he would pause from time to time as if he was pondering and studying the changes in the rhythm of the music. Under such an atmosphere, Lioli City was getting closer and closer. Finally, it appeared in front of them. Are you the participants or spectators of the second round? As soon as the spiritual beast carriage stopped, a group of cultivators came to the front to interrogate them. The person leading the group was a strong man with red hair and red eyes. There's no need to interrogate me. It's me. Duo Lan walked out of the carriage with a cold and aloof attitude. Immediately, the red-haired strong man's expression changed and he immediately kneeled on the ground. Chu Lai, Sinner Luo Shi, greets young lord. I didn't expect that young lord would also come to Lioli City to watch the second round of the mausoleum seizing. Luo Shi originally thought that with young lord's identity, he would directly participate in the third round. But this is also good. In Lioli City, there is a matter that requires young lord's decision. Please help us in Chu Lai. Chapter 1024. Did something happen to the disciples who stayed in Lioli City? After listening to the words of the red-haired burly man, Duo Lan frowned. She seemed to have guessed something. Subconsciously, she wanted to ask more about it. However, after thinking for a while, she realized that she was following Ning Fan to participate in the competition this time. If she causes trouble for Ning Fan again, it would not be nice. Thus, she hesitated for a moment and swallowed the words that were about to come out of her mouth. If you have anything to say, it won't be too late to tell me after I settle down in Lioli City. It's my negligence. Guards, bring this saintess to the city to settle down. The red-haired burly man was stunned. He glanced at the carriage thoughtfully and seemed to have met Ning Fan's eyes for a moment. Then he stood up and ordered, "No need. We can just enter the city by ourselves." Duo Lan rejected him indifferently. The carriage stopped at the stables outside Lioli City. Duo Lan brought Ning Fan and Old Wu into the city on foot. Carriages were not allowed in the city. Be it immortal emperors or commoners, all of them had the same treatment. This was because Lioli City had another significance. It was the Buddha capital of the Middle State. It was the holy land in the hearts of countless Buddhist cultivators. Of course, it was not allowed to be desecrated. Lioli City was the largest city in the Middle State. There were no less than 1,000 temples in the city. There were a total of 6 city gates. It would take a few days to walk from one of the city gates to the other with ordinary walking speed. Therefore, there were many relay stations in the city. There were also teleportation formations in the city that allowed people to teleport freely within the city. Lioli was one of the 7 treasures of Buddhism. It was green in color and glowed brightly. Putting aside the ordinary buildings in Lioli City, every single brick and tile of the temples were made of supreme-grade Lioli. The green light of the temple pierced through the clouds, as if the Dharma of Buddhism was covering the sky, giving people an incomparably sacred feeling. There were also many public squares in the city. Famous monks in the city would often give lectures there. Ning Fan had only walked 2 stone streets when he encountered a few eminent monks who were giving lectures. Many of them were listening. There were no mortals in the despicable tribe. Almost all of them were born with a medicine soul and were natural cultivators. However, most of them did not have a high cultivation base and were not passionate about cultivation. Therefore, in the central prefecture where flying was forbidden, their lives were not much different from those of mortals. Masons, stonemasons, carpenters, Painters. Ning Fan observed for a while and found out that most of the commoners living in Lioli City were craftsmen. Most of them were working for the temples. There were also some who opened restaurants and inns and sold various kinds of daily necessities. As for the Buddhist cultivators who came to Lioli City for a pilgrimage, they did not charge a single cent for their accommodation. Given the Dali's passion for gold and silver, this kind of convenient behavior was extremely rare. The customs of this place are indeed interesting, Ning Fan said with a smile. Yeah, this place is really interesting. I said I was a Buddhist cultivator and came to Lioli City on a pilgrimage, but those fools didn't even take my money and let me eat and drink whatever I wanted. In the end, I realized that my attire wasn't right. It wasn't the usual monk robe of a Buddhist cultivator, nor was it the usual nomadic clothing of the despicable people. I told them that I was the mausoleum guardian of the holy mountain. As a result, those people were even more respectful towards me. Some of the merchants who had some wealth even gave me a lot of gold and silver, asking me to bring them to the holy mountain and add some money to the Medicine Buddha's Taoist hall. Why should I add some oil to the Medicine Buddha's Taoist hall? Just by making a small round, I've swindled at least 2,000 taels of gold. Old Wu was extremely smug. Every time Ning Fan stopped to observe the local customs, he would run to the marketplace and deceive the residents of Lioli City. Does deceiving these people give you a sense of accomplishment? Speaking of which, why are you becoming more and more like Despicable Man? You are so passionate about gold. What's the use of it for us to cultivate the Tao? Ning Fan was speechless. It's useless, but it's fun to trick the idiots here. Interesting, satisfying. Ning Fan was speechless. Duo Lan was speechless. If Senior and Mr. Wu are interested in the local customs of Lioli City, why don't you take a stroll around the city for a while? Let me arrange a place to stay first. What do you think? Duo Lan's expression seemed to be troubled by something. All right. You go and arrange a place to stay first. I'm still looking around. Ning Fan knew that Duo Lan was worried about the words of that red-haired burly man. He also understood that the reason why Duo Lan did not ask the burly man's request in person was because he was afraid that it would bring him more trouble. After thinking for a while, he could not help but add, if you have something to do in this city, you don't have to worry about me. Just go ahead and do it. Duo Lan was stunned. Then he pursed his lips into a smile. What should I do if I cause trouble for Senior? Then you better try not to cause trouble for me. Ning Fan was speechless. This junior will certainly not cause any trouble for Senior. Duo Lan looked at Ning Fan gratefully. Then he found a relay station on the street and directly teleported towards a certain direction in the city. Ning Fan did not ask where Duo Lan was going to find a place to stay. With his spirit sense, he could easily find Duo Lan in the city. Of course, Duo Lan would also take the initiative to contact him. Undeniably, he gradually began to trust Duo Lan. He was no longer as guarded against him as he was against him in the beginning. Old Wu did not understand the hidden meaning behind Ning Fan and Duo Lan's conversation. However, he did not care about it either. On the surface, Ning Fan was looking at the surrounding scenery and people. He would even go to the nearby residences to swindle people. However, in reality, he often secretly took out his treasure-seeking tortoise and searched for something in the city. The expression on his face became more and more strange. Strange? How strange? I clearly sense the other piece of the Emperor Jade fate set in Lioli City. Why can't I sense it anymore after entering the city? Could it be that the owner of the Emperor Jade fate set sensed me because I'm too close to him? Is that why he is hiding? Then I will search every house in the city with the evil star. I really want to see where the owner is hiding. I can sense it now. Old Wu's beady eyes flashed. However, he managed to conceal the excitement in his heart very well. Just as he was about to find an excuse to slip away, he suddenly felt a sharp pain in his stomach. He said to Ning Fan, "Oh no, Master, something bad has happened. Little 8 seems to have a stomachache after eating the food from those vendors just now. I need to find a place to clean myself up. I can't accompany Master to stroll around the city anymore." Strange. Old Wu, have not had a stomachache for tens of millions of years. Could it be that I've fallen into someone's trap? However, I can use this as an excuse to escape. A stomachache? Are you kidding me? Ning Fan was speechless. Does old Wu think that I'm a despicable person? Why would I believe such a lie? How could a cultivator with indestructible internal organs have a stomachache? Pucci, as if to prove the truth of his words, old Wu let out a stinky fart. There seemed to be the sound of his excrement leaking. I really have a stomachache? As an immortal venerated realm cultivator who has abstained from eating for many years, I can't believe that he really has a stomachache. While Ning Fan was at a loss for words, he secretly narrowed his eyes. A green light flashed in an undetectable manner. When he looked around the city, he was instantly shocked. There were quite a number of experts who lived in seclusion in the city. Among them, there was no lack of immortal venerated realm and immortal king realm cultivators. Moreover, each of them had a very profound method of concealing their qi. With Ning Fan's eyesight, he actually could not see through them without using his heavenly vision. There were even a small number of qi which seemed to have entered the realm of immortal emperors. However, they definitely did not belong to the 5 emperors of the Middle Province. Instead, they were experts who lived in seclusion. It was no wonder that old Wu would fall into the trap. Perhaps, among some of the fools that he deceived, there were immortal venerated realm, immortal king realm, or even immortal emperor realm cultivators who pretended to be a fool and tricked him. The Buddhist sect did not encourage killing. As for these experts who were willing to live in seclusion in the city, most of them were orthodox Buddhist cultivators with pure Buddhist dharma and almost zero baleful qi. Thus, Ning Fan only gave him a small punishment and made him suffer a stomachache. If you have something to do in this Lioli city, just go ahead. You don't need to find a reason to do so. Of course, be careful when you act. Don't cause me too much trouble. This Lioli city isn't as full of fools as you imagine. Yes. Little 8 will remember this. Little 8 will never cause trouble for Master. Old Wu felt as if he had just been pardoned. He covered his buttocks and ran to a small alley where the rubbish was piled. It seemed like he wanted to settle his problem on the spot instead of looking for a toilet. Some of the residents who passed by began to point at the alley and whisper among themselves. Ning Fan was speechless. He pretended not to know this fellow and began to stroll around the city alone. It was good that he did not have Duo Lan and Old Wu following him. He could now properly organize the insights he had gained on the 100 Flowers Peak. The ancient devil Tao of destruction. This kind of ancient devil Tao seemed to be incompatible with the Buddhist qi in this place. It was as if they could not coexist. It was as if there was an urge to incite Ning Fan to tear this Lioli city apart and destroy it forcefully, shattering all the majesty of the Buddhist Tao. This was the hatred that the ancient devil had towards the Buddhist Tao. However, it was not the hatred that Ning Fan had for the Buddhist sect. This was the sign that Ning Fan had yet to truly grasp the true essence of the ancient devil. He still could not freely control the will of the ancient devil that wanted to destroy everything. In this place where the bells of the temples could be heard everywhere, it was an opportunity for him to temper his mind. He needed to constantly suppress the restlessness of the bloodline of the ancient devil to destroy the Buddhist sect. On the other hand, he had also obtained a trace of his own understanding of samsara from the 100 Flowers Peak. Samsara was like a stranger. It was not because it was his first time encountering it, but because he had forgotten about it. It was because he could not remember it and the heavens did not allow it. Was there anything strange about being strangers to each other after reincarnation? Was it really not strange for them to be strangers to each other after reincarnation? It was just like why the flowers bloomed, why the rain fell, and why the leaves fell from the trees. All of them were very common things. However, when one pondered about it carefully, all of them contained profound truths. As for the Buddhist Tao, it was precisely the subtleties of many things. When one was accustomed to everything around him, he would no longer find it strange. However, if he lost the heart to explore, many of the Tao insights that he had just gained would really flow away. During the Dharma ending era, most of the Tao of the ancient devils, ancient demons, and ancient gods were lost. Only the ancient Buddhist Tao seemed to have been preserved to this day. Among the 4 heavens, Buddhism flourished in the Western heaven. However, I never had the chance to set foot on it. The prosperity of Buddhism in this place might not be inferior to the Western heaven. What the Buddhists study is the reincarnation of all living things. The ringing of the bell in this city contains the ringing of the bells of thousands of temples. When they are combined together, it actually has a trace of touch to my understanding of samsara. If I try to trace it carefully, I can't find any trace. On one hand, my ancient devil bloodline is rejecting this place. On the other hand, my understanding of samsara is yearning for this place. No matter if it's rejecting or yearning, it's not my intention. This is the proof that I still can't fully control these powers. As for the 8 punishment rings in my body, they also seem to be yearning for this place. It's really strange. After walking for an unknown period of time, there was suddenly a hustle and bustle in front of them. The crowd seemed to be discussing something like innate spiritual medicine, blood martial arena, or soul-nourishing supreme treasure. 3 burly men suddenly squeezed out from the crowd and knocked down everyone who blocked their way in a domineering manner, as if they were in a hurry to continue on their journey. The 3 of them had a powerful cultivation base at the mid-shedding void realm. Even though they were holding back their strength, how could the ordinary residents of Lioli City withstand their attacks? In just a few breaths, they had knocked down 16 to 17 people. Coincidentally, Ning Fan was in the direction where the 3 burly men were heading. The 3 of them did not pay attention to where they were going at all and directly knocked into Ning Fan. However, the scene where Ning Fan was sent flying did not happen as expected. Instead, one of the burly men who knocked into Ning Fan staggered and fell to the ground from the impact. Damn it! Don't you have eyes when you walk? Just as the burly man was about to scold Ning Fan, he suddenly noticed Ning Fan's attire and his expression changed. The mausoleum guardian of the holy mountain. His face was filled with rare respect as he said awkwardly, "Please forgive me, my lord. I didn't have eyes when I was walking and bumped into you. Please don't lower yourself to my level." Where was the arrogance that he showed when he bumped into the civilians just now? Ning Fan did not explain his identity. He just gave the 3 burly men a deep look and asked, "What happened here? I seem to have heard someone talking about some innate soul-nourishing spiritual medicine." Naturally, he did not forget one of the reasons why he entered the Supreme Pill Sacred Region, to collect innate soul-nourishing spiritual medicine for the daughter of Phoenix Emperor Chongming. Isn't my lord the mausoleum guardian of the holy mountain? How could you not know about this? Oh, my lord must be someone who has just come out of seclusion after a long time. No wonder you don't know about the blood martial arena. What's the blood martial arena? As the mausoleum guardian of the holy mountain, you actually don't know about the blood martial arena? Damn it. I don't know. You're not the mausoleum guardian of the holy mountain. You're an external cultivator. It turns out that I bumped into an external cultivator. That scared the hell out of me. As soon as they realized that Ning Fan was an external cultivator, the 3 burly men no longer showed any respect. They cursed and turned to leave. Ning Fan, on the other hand, flicked his sleeve slightly. A ray of golden light swept across the 3 burly men, and they could no longer move. This was the application of the secret word, force. Just like the secret word, prestige, it was an inseparable part of the heaven sealing technique. By using the secret word, force, to neutralize the force of their movement, they were naturally unable to move. One had to admit that Ning Fan's understanding of the force and might of the heaven sealing technique was getting deeper and deeper day by day. Hiss! The 3 of them were shocked. How could they not know that Ning Fan was an external cultivator with unfathomable abilities? Otherwise, how could he use such an unheard-of method to immobilize the 3 of them? If the 3 of them were respectful when they mistakenly thought that Ning Fan was the mausoleum guardian of the holy mountain, they were shocked now. Don't be in such a hurry to leave. Can you tell me more about this blood martial arena? Although Ning Fan was wearing a smile on his face, the 3 burly men felt a chill down their spines. Subconsciously, they became terrified and told Ning Fan everything they knew. Only then did Ning Fan let them go. The blood martial arena was an underground arena in Lioli City. Where there was light, there would be shadows and darkness. If the Lioli city on the surface was as bright as the Holy Realm, then the underground Lioli city would be as bloody as purgatory. The blood martial arena was a place where cultivators could kill each other freely. Those who enter the arena would need to wear a blood martial mask to hide their true identity. That way, they would not have to bear any responsibility and complete the battle. Some people killed for fun. Some people killed for cultivation. There were also some people who watched the strong cultivators kill each other for fun. To enter the blood martial arena to watch the battles, one would need to buy tickets with different prices according to the scale of the battles. Those who participated in the battles would be rewarded if they could survive until the end. Of course, they would need to exchange for the rewards with their lives. Coincidentally, the owner of the blood martial arena had recently obtained an innate spiritual herb from the fierce domain continent. Since it was a spiritual herb that could replenish one's soul instead of increasing one's cultivation base, the owner of the blood martial arena did not attach much importance to it. Instead, he took it out as the reward for the blood martial arena's ranking battle. The ranking battle was a grand event that would only be held once every 10 years in the blood martial arena. Even though the owner of the blood martial arena did not attach much importance to this item, it did not mean that the others did not. There were many old monsters in the Great Humble Clan who were severely injured or had their divine souls injured. Therefore, this innate spiritual herb that could replenish one's soul had attracted a large number of people to participate in the ranking battle. Coincidentally, the Night Spirit Ganoderma was a tuft that Ning Fan had never obtained before. It could be used to treat the daughter of the Phoenix Emperor. Therefore, it was quite attractive to him. According to the three burly men, the ranking battle of the blood martial arena would not end with just one battle. Instead, hundreds or thousands of people would fight against each other in pairs. They would continuously advance to the next round and finally, the champion would be decided. There were risks. However, as long as you had sufficient strength, even if you could not win the battle, it was not impossible for you to escape unscathed. It would be fine as long as you were not instantly killed by your opponent. Ning Fan did not dare to say that he would definitely become the champion of the blood martial arena. However, he was confident that even if his opponent was an immortal Emperor Realm expert, he would still be able to escape if he was no match for him. In that case, the risk of participating in the blood martial arena was close to zero. There was no harm in trying to obtain the reward of the Night Spirit Ganoderma. The only thing that he was concerned about was the time of the blood martial arena. The ordinary battles of the blood martial arena are held every day. As for the ranking battle, it would only be held once every 10 years. The registration deadline for the ranking battle this time is 3 days later at the Z hour. The starting time is noon on the 4th day. The time of the ranking battle is not fixed. It is decided by the owner of the blood martial arena alone. However, I don't know why the ranking battle would start when the second round of the Mausoleum seizing battle is approaching. There are still 7 days before the second round of the middle state begins. The blood martial ranking battle will start 3 days before the second round of the Mausoleum seizing battle. If the participants of the blood martial arena are coincidentally participants of the second round, whether they are injured or dead, it would affect their performance in the second round of the Mausoleum seizing competition. Or perhaps, the blood martial arena's time is so close to the second round because it originally had the intention to attract the participants of the second round. These thoughts flashed through Ning Fan's mind, but it did not affect his decision. He arrived at a relay station on the street. After paying a small amount of gold and silver, he used the teleportation formation in the relay station and directly teleported to the underground world of Lu-Li City. Blood Martial Arena. This place was like an underground city built on a pile of rocks. There were tens of thousands of stone houses. At the center of the city, there were hundreds of circular arenas of different sizes. It was dark and damp. The smell of blood assaulted his nostrils. Inside the arenas, the unbridled roars of men could be heard continuously. On the roadside, there were men and women who did not mind the pedestrians and directly carried out the most primitive exercise in the alleys along the streets. Ning Fan walked out of one of the underground teleportation formations and scanned the place with his spirit sense. He could not help but frown. He did not like the chaos of this place. The ground under his feet was thick and solid, giving him a cold and hard feeling. He remembered that the underground of the Middle State was made of hard rocks. It was built to be impregnable. Even the extremely strong stone dragon that was 100 li could not escape through the earth. However, there was someone who could open up such an underground city in the hard rocks of the Middle State. It was not bad at all. As soon as Ning Fan walked out of the teleportation formation, a seductive lady who was wearing extremely revealing clothes walked towards him and giggled. "Sir, are you here to watch the battle? Today, there will be a late thought fragmentation realm expert fighting against an adult day true dragon. It will be the most anticipated battle today. The entrance ticket costs 500 stone coins. Sir, do you want one? If you buy 10 tickets at once, I will have special services." Stone coins were a kind of currency that was only circulated in Luli City and a few other regions. They were made of medicine soul stones and were roughly equivalent to Dao crystals. The seductive lady gave Ning Fan a coquettish look. However, Ning Fan gave her a disdainful look and said indifferently, "I don't want to watch the battle. I am here to register for the blood martial ranking battle. May I know where the registration place is?" "Registering for the ranking battle? TSKD. I am so handsome. Why would I go to the ranking battle to die? Could it be that I have no money to spend and want to fight for my life? With my looks, if you are really short of money, I might have some connections. Tonight, come to me. I will teach you the way to make money. How about it?" The seductive lady's eyes were filled with lust. However, Ning Fan's reply was still as cold as ice. "Where is the registration place? You really don't know how to flirt." The lady did not feel offended. After giggling, she showed Ning Fan the way and invited him to have a good time. Ning Fan was too lazy to care about it. He went straight to the registration place for the ranking battle. It was one of the hundreds of arenas for this technique. There was no audience in the arena. There were more than 100 people in the arena who were undergoing the test. There were many people who wanted to participate in the ranking battle. However, not everyone was qualified to do so. They had to go through a series of tests in order to be qualified to participate. There were not many items in the test. There was only one item, which was to receive a single attack from the examinee. The examinee was an old man with a scar on his face. He seemed to be a body cultivator with a peak-shedding void realm cultivation base. Among the hundreds of people here, only 7 or 8 people had successfully passed the test. However, they also suffered some minor injuries during the test. They were currently recuperating on the spot. The remaining people were either those who had not taken the test yet or those who could not receive a single attack from the muscular old man. However, they did not give up and wanted to continue trying. "Are you also here to register for the blood martial ranking battle?" The old man with a scar on his face glanced at Ning Fan, who had just entered the arena, and shook his head. He was so thin and weak that he did not look like a body cultivator. Those who were not body cultivators would not be able to receive his attack easily. They would also be at a disadvantage in the blood martial arena. "Yes." Ning Fan answered indifferently. "Then, go to the back and queue up." Ning Fan nodded his head and walked to the back of the queue. His eyes scanned through each of the examinees. The weakest of these examinees were only at the void refinement realm and void fragmentation realm. The stronger ones were mostly at the life immortal realm. There were only a few true immortal realm cultivators. The ones with the highest cultivation base among the examinees were actually 3 people who looked extremely familiar to him. They were the 3 burly men who had bumped into him just now. You're indeed worthy of being called the 3 prodigies of the sea shaman realm. You really live up to your reputation. All of you actually managed to receive the 10th punch from old ancestor Kwang. You should know that only late-shedding void realm experts could make old ancestor Kwang use his 10th punch. I'm afraid the 3 of you have already taken a half step into the late-shedding void realm, am I right? How enviable. If you guys continue cultivating for tens of thousands of years, you might even have a tiny bit of our strength. You don't have to be too envious. With the strength of the 3 of you, I'm afraid there's a high chance that you can get into the top 100 in the ranking battle. Ha! That's for sure. The three of us are the elites of the sea shaman realm. It's a piece of cake for us to get into the top 100. Unfortunately, we're not fighting in a team. Otherwise, if the three of us join forces, we can even escape unscathed from an early thought fragmentation realm expert. If we're at the thought fragmentation realm, we'll be able to sweep through all of them. Hiss. The three of you actually managed to escape unscathed from an early thought fragmentation realm expert with your combined strength. How impressive! Ha! Who asked us to be so powerful? The three burly men were proudly accepting the praises of the crowd. All of a sudden, they heard a burst of laughter coming from behind them. Damn it! Who's laughing? The three of them turned around angrily. What they saw was Ning Fan's faint smile. What a coincidence! Are you also here for the life-saving ranking battle? His tone was actually very polite. However, there was also a deep fear in his tone. Ning Fan answered indifferently and no longer cared about the three prodigies of the sea. People with such cultivation bases were not worthy of his attention at all. As for those who were staring at him because of his outer cultivator attire, he ignored all of them and did not give them any explanation. The three prodigies of the sea were not the only ones who looked familiar to Ning Fan. There was another person who gave Ning Fan a sense of familiarity. It was a young man wearing a cow-horned mask. Ning Fan could not see his face. Looking at his back, he looked very familiar. However, his chi was completely concealed by the cow-horned mask. Only the two eyes under the cow-horned mask were somewhat familiar. However, they gave people a dull and empty feeling. This gaze, it was actually Xinyu Chun. Why you here? Ning Fan walked towards the man with the cow-horned mask and asked with a frown. For you look a little familiar. The young man with the cow-horned mask spoke in a tone that Ning Fan was extremely familiar with. His tone lacked the usual foolishness of Xinyu Chun. Instead, it had a sharp and threatening feeling. You don't recognize me. Interesting. Is this mask affecting you? Ning Fan did not waste any time talking to the man with the cow-horned mask. His hand moved like lightning. Before the masked man could see clearly, Ning Fan's palm had already pressed on his mask. At first, he wanted to take off the mask. However, the moment his hand touched the mask, it was repelled by an indescribably strong force. Fortunately, his protective golden light appeared at the same time and dissolved the terrifying force that was heading towards Ning Fan. His face, however, turned solemn. The tremendous force that was attached to the mask was comparable to a strike from an immortal venerate. Yes, there is an immortal venerate expert here. However, is Xinyu Chun wearing this mask? Moreover, during that brief moment of contact, he seemed to have felt a trace of samsara chi from the mask. Samsara is like a stranger. Is it the power of samsara that makes Xinyu Chun who is wearing the mask feel unfamiliar to me? What is the origin of this mask? Chapter 1025. The masked young man seemed to be startled by Ning Fan's action. His body swayed and retreated several zhang away from Ning Fan. His eyes were filled with a hint of displeasure. What do you mean? If it wasn't for the fact that the masked young man did not sense any hostility from Ning Fan, he would have thought that Ning Fan wanted to attack him. Inwardly, he was even more fearful of Ning Fan's ghost-like speed. The changes in the area attracted the attention of many people. The examiner also showed a hint of displeasure, but because of Ning Fan's attire, he did not have the intention to intervene and chose to watch from the side. He's at the peak of the discarnate void stage, halfway into the thought-demolishing level. That mask conceals his cultivation base, so much so that when I first laid eyes on him, I couldn't see his true cultivation base. Compared to Xinyu Chun's previous cultivation, this cultivation was like a completely different person. Different cultivations meant different personalities and intellect. The only thing that could be confirmed was that this person was Xinyu Chun. All living things in the world had their own unique aura. It was like 1,000 blooming flowers. No matter how similar their fragrance was, there would still be differences. I have been together with Xinyu Chun for such a long time. Even with the cow-horned mask, If I had the intention to look, I would definitely not have mistaken this aura. Ning Fan's eyes flickered with an undetectable green light. Gradually, he saw some clues from the masked young man's body and had some guesses. His expression became even more solemn. Ning Fan was still unable to confirm these speculations. Seeing that there were so many onlookers and it seemed like a storm had already been stirred up, he could not help but feel a headache. He had only come to sign up for the Blood Warrior Arena ranking tournament. He did not want to cause any trouble here. Don't worry. I don't have any evil intentions towards you. It's just that I'm acquainted with the other half of your soul. That's why I was a little surprised when I saw you here. Ning Fan explained using telepathy. The masked young man's gaze instantly turned cold as if his greatest secret had been touched, and he sent a voice transmission in a low voice. What other half of the soul? What are you talking about? I don't understand. It's fine if you don't understand. Ning Fan gave the masked young man a deep look. Then he turned around and walked to an empty place. He stopped talking to anyone and waited for the test to begin. There were still more than 100 people in front of him. Even if the content of the test was very simple and fast, it still took nearly 4 hours before it was Ning Fan's turn. Among the more than 100 people, apart from the 3 heroes of the Sea Sorcerer and the masked young man, only 1 or 2 people had registered successfully. The rest did not even qualify to participate in the Blood Warrior ranking tournament. The masked young man left after reporting his name. Facing the old man who was at the peak of shedding Void Realm, the masked young man dealt with him very calmly and easily passed the test. As for the 3 prodigies of the Sea Sorcerer clan, they were still lingering around the place, seemingly curious about Ning Fan's test. The muscular old man in charge of assessing the applicants was an expert who ranked in the top 100 of the last Blood Martial Arena. He was known as Ancestor Kwang. This was a body cultivator. His body was ferocious to the point of exploding, and he revealed strength that was sufficient to move mountains and overturn seas. With a wave of his hand, even space warped. When Ning Fan stepped forward to take the test, old Ancestor Kwang merely gave him a sidelong glance and said with a proud tone, "I'll be frank with you first. Even if you are the tomb guardian of the Holy Mountain, I will not show any mercy. If you can withstand more than 3 of my punches, you can sign up for the Blood Martial ranking tournament. If you can't withstand my punches and end up getting injured, I won't be responsible even if the Holy Mountain investigates the matter. Don't worry. I'm not the tomb guardian of the Holy Mountain." Ning Fan said with a faint smile. "Oh, so you're an external cultivator." Old Ancestor Kwang frowned. Then he burst into laughter. When he faced Ning Fan, he no longer had any fear. Instead, he revealed his ferocity. "Then you better be careful. I hate external cultivators the most in my life. I certainly won't show you any mercy in this test. Take my punch." As soon as old Ancestor Kwang stomped on the ground, he disappeared from his original spot in an instant. He did not even leave a trace of his afterimage. At the same time, Ning Fan felt a gust of wind coming from his left side. Of course, he did not know that old Ancestor Kwang was attacking him from this side. His opponent wanted to get closer to him and forcefully attack him with his punches. This was a common tactic used by most body cultivators. Without saying a word, Ning Fan's body also swayed and disappeared from his original spot. At the next moment, a loud explosion suddenly resounded from a place where there was no one around. The space became extremely distorted. Then 2 figures appeared from the place where the collision occurred. They were none other than old Ancestor Kwang and Ning Fan. It was a collision between 2 fists. Old Ancestor Kwang used his signature skill, the Devil-Breaking Fist, to deliver a full-force attack. The massive shockwave that was set off directly caused many of the test takers to sway from side to side, almost unable to stand steadily. Their expressions changed drastically. Only then did the crowd realize that old Ancestor Kwang did not use his true fist strength to test his strength at all during the test. After all, none of his previous punches could cause such a massive shockwave. Even the 3 prodigies of the Sea Sorcerer clan wore a solemn expression. If old Ancestor Kwang had taken the test with such a serious attitude, they would definitely not be able to withstand the 10th punch of the devil-breaking fist. Moreover, the first punch that old ancestor Kwang threw out now already had the destructive power of the 10 combined fists. It was almost impossible for them to withstand it without the broken sense technique. Old ancestor Kwang was full of confidence in the strength of his fist. His eyes were filled with bloodthirsty desire. He wanted to dye the ground of the arena red with the blood of this external cultivator. He was confident that he could send Ning Fan flying with a single punch. However, the moment their fists collided, his expression changed drastically and was filled with shock. Even though their fists collided, old ancestor Kwang had an illusion that what he hit was not Ning Fan's fist but an entire cultivation planet instead. The force of his punch was incomparably heavy. The heaviness of the punch was still secondary. The force of the opponent's punch was even more bizarre. It was like a volcano erupting. It actually had a sudden eruption. At the moment of contact, the bones in his fist and even his entire arm that collided with Ning Fan actually felt a sharp pain as if it was being crushed. He could not even withstand it for a moment. After being shaken by the tremendous force, he directly spurted out blood and was sent flying by Ning Fan's punch. His body was like a meteor. After a loud bang, he heavily smashed into the stone wall of the arena far away. The crowd of cultivators was shocked. The 3 prodigies of the Sea Sorcerer clan were drenched in cold sweat. Perhaps even some early thought fragmentation realm old monsters would not be able to withstand the destructive power of that punch. They thought that if that punch landed on the 3 of them, it was highly possible that they would die in a single blow. It was unknown whether old ancestor Kwang was still alive or not. Rumble. That section of the wall suddenly collapsed. Then, old ancestor Kwang walked out from the ruins with a calm expression. Hiss! Everyone was shocked. Old ancestor Kwang was actually able to survive such a terrifying punch. He really deserved to be an expert who was ranked in the top 100 of the blood martial arena. Young man, the strength of your punch is not bad. This is your identity token. Take it. 4 days later, at 1:15 p.m, go to the number 1 arena with this token and you can participate in the blood martial ranking battle. If you are late, you will be disqualified from participating in the battle. Remember not to be late. Old ancestor Kwang laughed in a seemingly calm manner and tossed a ray of light to Ning Fan. Ning Fan caught the ray of light in his hand. It was a green wooden token that was filled with lightning power. After keeping the wooden token, Ning Fan gave old ancestor Kwang a deep look before turning around and leaving. The registration ends today. Those who are not qualified to participate in the battle, if you still want to register, come again tomorrow. Old ancestor Kwang impatiently chased all the participants out of the arena. Then he closed the door and left the place, returning to his cave residence. As soon as he returned to his cave residence, he could no longer hold on. He directly spurted out blood and fell to the ground. This man is so strong. As a matter of fact, Ning Fan was also quite surprised that he managed to severely injure old ancestor Kwang with a single punch. Admittedly, with his 9th Nirvana Heavenly Devil Realm Ancient Devil Cultivation base, it was a piece of cake for him to send a Peak Shikong body cultivator flying with a single punch. However, one should know that he did not use his full strength in that punch. He only used less than 1/10 of his strength. Logically speaking, a Peak Shikong body cultivator with less than 1/10 of his strength should not have been able to be beaten up so badly. At most, he could only slightly suppress his opponent. However, he did not expect that after comprehending the true essence of the ancient devil, the destructive power of his punch had increased significantly compared to before. Moreover, it was because he naturally used the method of exerting force of the ancient devil mountain breaking strike. It was the only ancient devil divine ability that he had created himself so far. Its degree of profoundness was not to be underestimated. It caused the power contained in his punch to suddenly explode, resulting in a small critical strike. Just such a small critical strike directly increased the true destructive power of his punch by more than 1-fold. That was why it was far beyond Ning Fan's expectation. That was why old ancestor Kwang ended up in such a miserable state. Fortunately, Ning Fan unexpectedly held back his strength at the last moment. Otherwise, old ancestor Kwang would probably be killed by 1/10 of Ning Fan's punch strength. If that's really the case, I'm afraid that it would really cause an incident in this underground arena. It seems like the power of my newly created ancient Devil Mountain breaking strike is still beyond my expectation. If I want to master it, I'm afraid I still need to practice hard. Ning Fan thought to himself. After the registration ended, Ning Fan did not stay in the arena for long. Instead, he chose to leave directly. However, just as he stepped into the teleportation formation, he suddenly sensed something and looked towards a certain direction. Then, the formation light brought him back to the ground. He seems to have discovered me. Is this person the external cultivator who defeated the 100 Flowers Emperor's Tao elephant head-on? In the dark, a man who wore a green evil ghost mask and whose body was transparent smiled mysteriously. He was the real master behind the Blood Martial Arena. Master, you're right. According to the information I received, this person is the external cultivator who defeated the 100 Flowers Emperor's Tao elephant. However, that 100 Flowers Emperor has been severely injured for 1,000 years. Moreover, she's just an immortal emperor of the Middle Province. Her abilities are far weaker than the emperors of the Holy Mountain. It's not a big deal for this external cultivator to defeat her. A few armored guards behind the illusory man answered. You guys have underestimated the 100 Flowers Emperor. The waters of the 100 Flowers Peak are very deep. That bee demon is unfathomable. The illusory man touched a scar on his chest and frowned. Bee demon? What bee demon? Obviously, the armored guards did not know about it. These things are not something you guys can know. Even the 5 emperors of the Middle Province, the 3 hidden emperors of Colored Glaze City, and the 19 emperors of the Holy Mountain are not qualified to know about it. That's one of the 5 great supreme beings of the entire Great Bay. 5 great supreme beings? The armored guards were shocked. It was their first time hearing about the 5 great supreme beings of the Great Bay. However, at the next moment, the 3 of them were at a loss. All of a sudden, their memories about the 5 great supreme beings disappeared. Did Master say something just now? The armored guards asked blankly. He said something that you guys shouldn't know. Let's not talk about this anymore. Let's continue talking about the information about that external cultivator. I'm very interested in him. Yes. I've also received a piece of news. That external cultivator has greatly angered Great Emperor Lu Tua. Moreover, the head disciple of Lu Tua has secretly spread the word that he's going to teach that young man a bloody lesson in the second round of the Mausoleum's seizing battle. Offended Lu Tua? The spy that I've planted in the heavenly capital peak has sent me a piece of top-secret information. It said that this external cultivator had once seen the great perfection in the first round of the Mausoleum's seizing battle. He saw the great perfection. The illusory man's expression suddenly turned serious. Then, he seemed to have thought of something and became silent. In the history of the Great Bay, there are only 3 people who could see the great perfection before the immortal Emperor realm. The dead Emperor of the Sky Flame and the Light Emperor of the Holy Mountain. This young man is not bad. Aren't there 3 of them? I wonder who the other one is? It seemed like it was the first time that the armored guards had heard such a secret. They could not help but feel curious. The other one is an expert who once stole into the Holy Mausoleum. He used to be extremely arrogant and thought that he could go anywhere he wanted in the world. However, he was defeated by the 5 great supreme beings one after another. In order to fulfill his promise to one of the supreme beings, he has already vanished from the Great Bay clan. The 5 great supreme beings? What are the 5 great supreme beings? Does our Great Bay clan have such a title? The expressions of the armored guards were startled. Then they became dazed and forgot about it. Did Master say something just now? He said something that you guys shouldn't know. Make some arrangements. I'm going to participate in the ranking battle 4 days later. 7 days later, I'm going to participate in the second round of the Mausoleum's seizing battle. Arrange a suitable identity for me. I'm very interested in this external cultivator. Perhaps I can gain some insights from him and break through the last barrier before I reach the quasi-saint realm. Yes. Ning Fan naturally did not know that the illusory man was a ruthless person who was half a step into the quasi-saint realm. However, he could also feel how powerful that person was. Ning Fan could not help but admit that the Great Bay clan had a deep foundation. There was an expert who was half a step into the quasi-saint realm hiding under the blood martial arena. In a mere Lioli city, there were actually no less than 3 powerful chi that were comparable to immortal emperors. In addition, there were the 5 emperors of the Middle State and the immortal emperors of the Holy Mountain. This Great Bay clan was not an ordinary Eastern Sky Force. It was definitely a super force like the Dark Race and the Southern Clan. After all, it was the descendant of a saint realm. What Ning Fan did not expect was that he would actually meet the somewhat strange Xin Yu Chun in this blood martial arena. Could the strangeness of Xin Yu Chun be related to the old man with the water vat that he mentioned before? But judging from his symptoms, the other party did not seem to have any evil intentions. As soon as he returned to the ground, he secretly activated his spirit sense, trying to find out where Duo Lon was staying in the city. At the same time, he also looked for Old Wu to find out what this guy had been doing during the period of time when he was registering for the arena battles. He found Duo Lon, but Old Wu Ba seemed to have gone missing. He could not find him in the city. Could it be that he was trapped in a certain place and could not be sensed? Ning Fan frowned. Even though Old Wu Ba liked to stir up trouble, he always knew how to seek fortune and avoid calamity. He should not have provoked those existences that he could not afford to offend. However, this Lioli city was after all a place where experts gathered. The chi concealment technique of the old monsters here was really profound. Even a heavenly being realm cultivator like him had to spend a lot of effort to see through it. If Old Wu Ba really made a mistake and offended a powerful expert, it was not impossible for him to lose his whereabouts. Suddenly, an illusory message-transmitting flying sword broke through the sky on the long street of Lioli City, startling countless passers-by. That message-transmitting flying sword flew towards Ning Fan without any deviation. As soon as it exploded, a message went straight into Ning Fan's sea of consciousness. "Master, save me." Surprisingly, it was Old Wu Ba's message for help. Ning Fan's eyes immediately darkened. This guy really caused trouble again. However, even with Old Wu Ba's strength, he could not escape from the other party and could only choose to ask for help. This was enough to show that the other party was not an ordinary person. To care or not to care? Ning Fan's thoughts turned and immediately had a plan. This Old Wu Ba was not a loyal person, but after all, he had karma with the old monster. Moreover, during this period of time, no matter what, he had always received a lot of benefits from Old Wu Ba. This Old Wu Ba was brought into the great inferiority by him, so naturally he could not ignore it. Moreover, Old Wu Ba had always left some leeway in doing things. He would not offend anyone to death. Most of the great inferiority hermits were also people who did not like to kill. This matter might not necessarily have no room for a peaceful solution. Having made up his mind, Ning Fan immediately activated the rain technique to the extreme. Suddenly, a curtain of rain fell on the sky of Lioli City. It was all Ning Fan's pervasive rain sense. "Hey, why is it raining out of nowhere?" The pedestrians on the long street suddenly dispersed because of the sudden drizzle. "I can't find him. I can't actually find him." Ning Fan's heart sank. With the unpredictability of his rain sense, even if the place where Old Wu Ba was trapped was where an immortal emperor was, he should still be able to sense it. However, after searching the entire Lioli city, Ning Fan could not even find a trace of Old Wu Ba's chi. Obviously, the opponent's ability had exceeded his understanding. Could it be that the opponent is actually a first-grade quasi-saint? If the opponent really has the strength comparable to a quasi-saint, how could he give Old Wu Ba the chance to send out the sound-transmitting flying sword to ask for help? Or perhaps, this person is deliberately luring me to go there? If that's the case, even if I don't save Old Wu Ba, the opponent would have already targeted me. It seems like I have to meet this person. This person wants to see me, but he concealed Old Wu Ba's chi, not giving me the possibility to investigate. Is he trying to test my ability? But if this is really a test, it doesn't seem like he has any evil intentions. Or maybe this is not a test but a guidance? If my rain technique can still find the opponent under the concealment of such a powerful expert, I'm afraid it will not be a small improvement. Ning Fan closed his eyes and stood quietly in the curtain of rain. His spirit sense swept through the entire Lioli city along with the drizzle. I can't find him. I still can't find him. His comprehension of the rain technique had already become close to nature. It was no different from the natural rain. What I need to improve is not the comprehension of the rain technique but the control of my spirit sense. Ning Fan seemed to have grasped the key point. When he was about to give it a try, he suddenly saw a lady holding an umbrella walking towards him. She stood alone on the long street in the rain, holding the umbrella and looking at him with an indescribably complicated gaze. Song Mang Dai, do you need help? Ning Fan's eyes turned solemn. It was not only because of the lady's words. It was also because, after the lady took off her veil, her appearance was extremely similar to Dugu's. However, why is this lady's chi so similar to the secondary demon soul of the Hornet Demon Lord? It's as if she is the secondary demon soul of the Hornet Demon Lord. What is going on? It seems like you don't know me anymore. You don't know me. Ning Fan remembered that he had heard this sentence in the scripture depository tower given to him by the ancient Chaos Great Emperor. In the scripture depository tower, there was a stone door that he couldn't open. There was such a sentence that made him feel an indescribable sadness. Who are you? Are you the secondary demon soul of the Hornet Demon in the 100 Flowers Great Emperor's treasury or someone else? Ning Fan frowned. This lady's voice couldn't bring him the same soul-shaking sadness as the voice behind the stone door. Although the two voices were similar to each other to a certain extent, I am Ah Feng of the Xiu Feng. The little turtle you are looking for is in the Southern Medicine Temple outside the Eastern City Gate. The lady glanced at Ning Fan in a daze and left with the umbrella. Ning Fan thoughtfully looked at the lady's back until he couldn't see her anymore. There was still an indescribable feeling lingering in his heart. Who is this lady? However, this kind of thinking was quickly interrupted by some other noises. In the rain, a few profligate young masters suddenly ran out from the dark after the lady left and blocked Ning Fan's way. Who are you? You are wearing outer cultivator clothes. Could you be the tomb guardian of the sacred mountain? But even if you are the tomb guardian of the sacred mountain, we will not give Ah Feng to you. Ah Feng is mine. Whoever snatches it will die. Nonsense. Ah Feng is mine. Damn it. How dare you snatch Ah Feng from me? Didn't we agree to teach this brat a lesson? I will teach you a lesson first. You dare to hit me? I will beat you to death. They were actually a group of admirers of Ah Feng in Luli City. These people were envious of Ah Feng's flirting with Ning Fan and wanted to teach Ning Fan a lesson. However, an internal conflict broke out. 5 or 6 of them started fighting each other because of a disagreement. What a stupid conversation. It really had the style of a despicable person. Ning Fan naturally couldn't be bothered with the farce in front of him. His figure flashed and directly walked past these profligate young masters. His mind forcibly stopped thinking about the lady and put the matter of saving Elder Wu on the table first. The one who trapped Elder Wu was most likely a quasi-saint. That lady doesn't seem to be simple. Using the teleportation formation of a relay station on the street, Ning Fan was instantly teleported outside the Eastern City Gate. This was a rural area. There were only 2 or 3 houses scattered here and there. Apart from that, there was also an extremely dilapidated temple with the words Southern Medicine Temple written on the plaque. The Southern Medicine Temple was located in a remote area. At this moment, there were only a few passers-by who wanted to enter the city. The moment Ning Fan approached the temple, a gust of chilly wind suddenly blew out from the temple. However, the passers-by acted as if they didn't hear it and turned a blind eye to it. The gate of the Southern Medicine Temple suddenly opened on its own. There was also a slightly old-fashioned voice that spread out from within the temple. You only found this place because of that damned bee's guidance. It's not your own ability. Such a cheap trick has made you lose a great benefit from this old man. What a pity. Senior wants to teach me the ultimate method of using spirit sense? Spirit roaming 10,000 li. Ning Fan's eyes were filled with reminiscence. He had accidentally used the spirit-roaming 10,000-ly divine ability during the early days of his cultivation. However, he never had the chance to comprehend it. Today seemed to be an opportunity. As soon as Ning Fan's words came out, the old man inside the temple immediately exclaimed in surprise. Obviously, he was surprised that Ning Fan was able to see through this point so easily. Chapter 1026. Spirit roaming 10,000-ly was a great divine ability. Its secret lay in stretching one's spirit sense to infinitely fine and far away. In the past, when Ning Fan had just stepped onto the path of cultivation, he had accidentally used this ability. At that time, his spirit sense was still very weak. However, because it was stretched to its limit, it directly extended out of the rain world to the northern heaven. This was also a divine ability with an extremely high risk. In the past, Ning Fan almost lost his life because he could not retract his spirit sense. Fortunately, he was saved by the tablet master immortal Emperor Meng Xuanzi. Today, there was a mysterious old monster who wanted to guide him to spirit roaming 10,000-ly. It was really interesting. Outside the Southern Medicine Temple, Ning Fan raised his head and looked at the sky. There was nothing in the sky except for the light drizzle. However, he seemed to be looking at something seriously and counting something. Gradually, his expression turned serious. 1 level, 2 levels, 3 levels, 10 levels, 20 levels, 200 levels, 400 levels, 1,149 levels. Some passers-by were curious about Ning Fan's behavior. They stopped and looked at the sky together with him. However, they could not see anything from the sky. Ning Fan did not answer their questions. In the end, they could only leave with doubts. They thought to themselves that this man who was counting at the sky was really a strange person. Of course, because of Ning Fan's attire, they did not dare to say it out loud. After an unknown period of time, Ning Fan withdrew his gaze and slowly closed his eyes. Invisible spirit sense began to revolve around his body. If someone could see this invisible spirit sense, they would be surprised to find that some runes were slowly forming on the surface of Ning Fan's spirit sense. Those runes were colorless and formless. Only those with profound eyes could see the Tao of wood flowing on the runes. These runes were condensed by Ning Fan using the power of the Tao of wood. The process of condensing them was extremely rough and difficult. As time passed, more and more runes were condensed on the surface of Ning Fan's spirit sense. When those runes gathered together, they actually turned into a thin layer of cocoon on the surface of his spirit sense. After the cocoon was formed, Ning Fan's spirit sense obviously improved in a certain aspect. Unfortunately, before Ning Fan could comprehend it in detail, the cocoon cracked open with a cracking sound as if it was broken due to the wrong method of cultivation. Nearly 2 hours of hard work was wasted. Ning Fan furrowed his brows. Then, he let out a bitter smile and cupped his fists towards the direction of the temple. Senior has the heart to guide me, but I can't comprehend the method within. I'm afraid I'll have to disappoint Senior. The voice in the temple said, "Disappointed? No, little friend, you've really surprised this old man. You clearly don't understand the incantation of armor, but you can imitate it to such an extent with just one look. I have never seen someone with such extraordinary comprehension skills. Senior, you flatter me too much. Junior doesn't deserve it." Ning Fan said politely, but his heart was secretly startled. He had a guess. Divine Will's secret art, was it the terrifying mystical ability that covered the surface of the divine sense with a thin layer of talisman patterns that doubled the toughness of the divine sense? Without a doubt, this mysterious old monster who had lured him here knew the great magical power of spirit wander. In the empty sky, there was actually an infinitely thin thread of spirit sense that was connected to the Southern Medicine Temple. As long as Ning Fan could see that thread of spirit sense, he would be able to find this place even without the guidance of the lady with the umbrella. There were very few people who could see that thread of spirit sense. Only Ning Fan, who had cultivated the incantation of spirit sense and the peering rain technique, could see the thread of spirit sense in the sky. If it was someone else, Even if they had the strength of an immortal venerable or immortal king, they might not be able to see it. This was the result of the mysterious old monster purposely revealing the thread of spirit sense and not hiding it. If he had the intention to hide it, even Ning Fan wouldn't know that there was a thread of spirit sense in the sky. That was because the passers-by didn't have enough cultivation to see it. That was why they felt that Ning Fan's calculation was strange. They wouldn't know that Ning Fan was counting the layers of the spirit sense thread. There were a total of 1,149 layers. The tenacity of this mysterious old monster's spirit sense was too terrifying. Spirit wander is a great magical power. As my cultivation base gradually increased, it's not that I haven't tried to cultivate this technique, but I still couldn't succeed. In order to master this technique, one must have the cultivation base of a true immortal realm cultivator and must have a great comprehension in the cultivation of spirit sense. Only then can one achieve the first step of spirit wander, drawing the thread of spirit sense into the finest detail. As for the second step, which is to increase the tenacity of the thread of spirit sense, only a few people can achieve it. Drawing the thread into the finest detail referred to the technique of drawing the spirit sense into a thin thread. It required one to cultivate the fine control of spirit sense to a certain extent in order to achieve this step. Among 100 true immortals, only 1 or 2 of them could achieve this. These people could draw their spirit sense into a thread that was 1/10 or 1/20th of its size, thereby increasing the coverage of their spirit sense by 10 or 20 times. However, this was usually their limit. They couldn't achieve the theoretical goal of spirit wander to infinitely fine and far. It was because the thinner the spirit sense was, the lower its tenacity would be and the easier it would break. The infinitely fine thread of spirit sense was also infinitely brittle at the same time. It would break with just a gentle breeze. It couldn't be used to cast techniques at all. Improving the tenacity of spirit sense was the biggest problem in cultivating spirit wander. Because of this limitation, there were many people who could achieve the first step of spirit wander. However, there were only a few people who could truly grasp this technique during the Dharma ending era. Even quasi-saints like Xiang Guangzi and Taoist Mu Song did not know how to do it. However, the old monster in this temple actually knew spirit wander. This old monster in this temple must not be underestimated. Ning Fan smiled bitterly in his heart. Old Wu had fallen into this person's hands and he had no idea how to get him back. Do you know why I gave you some pointers? The voice in the temple asked. I don't. It's because I sensed a trace of the spirit sense art's chi from your body. However, it doesn't seem to be complete. I have a karmic connection with immortal Emperor Tai Chong of the ancient heavenly court. He is the great emperor of palm sense. Even though he isn't good at fights, he has a deep understanding of the Tao of spirit sense. I have never seen anyone below the sage realm who could surpass him in the Tao of spirit sense. If I didn't obtain some benefits from him, it would be impossible for me to cultivate spirit wander to this level with my innate talent. What's your relationship with Tai Chong? Are you his descendant? I'm sorry to disappoint you, senior. I had only cultivated the incomplete cultivation method of immortal Emperor Tai Chong by chance. I'm not his descendant. Ning Fan thought for a while and answered honestly. Then it's really a pity. If you are his descendant, I will need to help you cultivate the true spirit wander because of the promise I made to him. However, if you aren't, then I don't need to fulfill this promise. It's enough for me to give you some pointers. However, it's absolutely impossible for me to teach you the complete 8 spirit sense arts for no reason. That's the end of the pointers. Let's talk about your servant. The old man sighed in disappointment and withdrew the thread of spirit sense that was hidden in the sky. His voice gradually became cold. It was one thing for Ning Fan to have some fate with immortal Emperor Tai Chong. It was another thing for Ning Fan's servant to offend him. I wonder how did my servant, Old Wu, offend Senior? Please tell me. Although Ning Fan knew that the old man was strong, he still remained calm. After all, even though the old man's tone was cold, there was no real killing intent. There was still room for negotiation. Humph. That little turtle is called Old Wu, right? He took a fancy to one of my treasures and wanted to take it away. Then he made a bet with me. Now that he lost the bet, he is trapped in my water jar. It's not difficult for you to save him. You just need to make a bet with me. What bet? I bet that you won't be able to enter the Southern Medicine Temple alive and come to me. However, if you can do it, then I will lose the bet and you can take that little turtle away. However, if you lose the bet, you will die. I will take your flesh and blood. Ning Fan's heart shuddered. If he lost, it would mean that he would die in the Southern Medicine Temple. He would die on the way to meet that mysterious old monster. This temple must be filled with dangers. Your relationship with this little turtle doesn't seem to be very good. I have only imprisoned him for less than half a day and he has already scolded you more than 1,800 times. For the sake of this disloyal servant, you better not make this bet with me. The old man hadn't finished speaking when he suddenly exclaimed in surprise. It turned out that Ning Fan didn't hesitate at all and directly stepped into the Southern Medicine Temple. Such decisiveness. Interesting kid. The old man's voice drifted further and further away until it could no longer be heard. Ning Fan's eyes were calm as he stepped into the Southern Medicine Temple. His relationship with Old Wu was certainly not good enough for him to risk his life for him. However, even if it was just for the karma between Old Wu and the old monster, he wouldn't leave Old Wu behind. Even if the other party was suspected to be a quasi-saint. The moment he stepped into the temple, the rain technique outside the temple was forcefully cut off and the rain stopped. Ning Fan's expression changed slightly. The inside and outside of the temple were only separated by a single door. However, it felt like they were two completely different worlds. With his current cultivation base, the moment he entered the temple, he could no longer send his spirit sense out of the temple. It was as if he was imprisoned in the gloomy temple. From the outside, the Southern Medicine Temple was just a small and rundown temple. From the inside, there were more than 10,000 yin towers. Desolate smoke and grass grew everywhere. Ghostly cries filled the sky. Dried bones were everywhere. Broken blades and broken staffs could be seen everywhere. It didn't look like a pure land of Buddhism at all. It looked more like a cave of ghosts. No, this is an illusion technique. Ning Fan suddenly felt something. He suddenly understood why those passers-by turned a blind eye to the overflowing yin qi in this temple. It turned out that he was the only one who was affected by the illusion technique. The moment he stepped into the temple was the moment the illusion technique was activated. Break. Ning Fan's left eye flashed with a demonic light and shot out a purple-black ray of light. It hit the gloomy world inside the temple and created a crack. It was the innate skill of the Fu Li clan that could see through the illusion technique. As soon as the crack opened, Ning Fan leaped into it. The scenery in front of him instantly changed. He was still standing outside the Southern Medicine Temple, maintaining the posture of looking at the sky and counting. The rain was still falling, but there was no more overflowing yin qi in the temple. Did he escape from the illusion technique? It turns out that he never entered the temple. He was already affected by the illusion technique right from the beginning. This man is really strange. He has been looking at the sky for 2 hours. I wonder what he is counting for. Shoo, don't talk nonsense. He is the tomb guardian of the sacred mountain. Some passers-by on the road were pointing at Ning Fan. Ning Fan was also speechless. How did those people know that he had been looking at the sky for 4 hours? Could it be that they had been standing by the road for 2 hours? Aren't they bored? Roar. Those passers-by who were laughing at Ning Fan suddenly turned into evil spirits and pounced at him. The ground cracked from the middle, revealing the blazing magma hell below. Only then did Ning Fan realize that he did not escape from the illusion technique at all. Instead, he was still trapped inside it. The Fu Li clan's innate skill of breaking illusions was indeed powerful. However, his cultivation base was far weaker than that mysterious old monster's. It was still not enough for him to escape from the opponent's illusion technique. There are 2 ways to break the illusion technique. One is to rely on your cultivation base, divine abilities and magic treasures to forcefully break free. The other is to have a companion to help you wake up from your trance. If you don't have either of these, then the illusion technique will become a killing tool that is much more terrifying than other divine abilities. Without a doubt, this is a test of life and death. That old man did not lie to me about this. With my current cultivation base, I am not strong enough to see through this technique. However, other than the ability to break illusions, I also have the ability to reflect the illusion technique of the Fu Li clan. In a sense, the reflected illusion technique is much scarier than seeing through the illusion technique. It is especially so for people like me who are trapped in the opponent's illusion technique. If I can find the weakness of the opponent's illusion technique, I might even have a chance to reverse the situation. Ning Fan dodged the evil spirits that were pouncing at him. While dodging, he was observing his surroundings. His eyes flashed with green light. After a long time, his gaze suddenly shifted to the abyss of hell in the crack on the ground. That magma seems to be the most dangerous place in this technique. However, if I'm not mistaken, the weakest part of this technique happens to be hidden there. Ning Fan shook off the group of evil spirits and leaped into the magma of hell. The scorching magma of hell had a temperature that was close to terrifying. If one jumps into it without any defense, even an immortal emperor would have a layer of skin peeled off. The magma was formed by the illusion technique. Ordinary defensive methods would not be able to withstand its temperature at all. Besides, Ning Fan, who was trapped in the illusion technique, was not in his true form at the moment. Thus, he could not use any defensive methods at all. Thus, he might as well use the power of his own illusion technique to defend himself against the magma. At this moment, he used the Dao technique that he had rarely used until now. At the same time he leaped into the magma, black qi kept gushing out from his body and enveloped him within it. That black qi was the color of the night. It was the Dao technique that was formed after the demonized Dark Knight Dao elephant achieved grand completion. Since he was trapped in the opponent's illusion technique, it was naturally impossible for Ning Fan to directly replace the world of the opponent's illusion technique with his own darkness. However, it was still possible for him to activate some of the power of the Dark Knight illusion technique to resist the damage of the opponent's illusion technique. Most of the magma that was approaching him was blocked by the black qi. However, there was still a small amount of it that penetrated through his illusion defense and splashed on his body. It was scorching. It was a scorching heat that could pierce one's soul. Every time he was burned by the magma, Ning Fan would feel that his mind and spirit were greatly depleted. However, no matter how weak Ning Fan was, his expression was always calm. After leaping into the magma, he continued to swim downward. This seemingly bottomless hell was actually not that deep. After passing through the initial scorching magma, Ning Fan suddenly felt a chill around his body. He had actually fallen into a stone chamber. This stone chamber was built in the depths of the magma. The four walls were filled with illusion runes. There was even a pair of oxhorned crystals floating in midair. The oxhorned crystals were the source of the power of this illusion technique. It was also the weakest point of this technique. Ning Fan waved his sleeve. Large amounts of black qi swept towards the oxhorned crystals, as if he wanted to contaminate them. However, before the black qi could get close to the crystals, rays of formation light shot out from the crystals, turning into complicated restrictive formations that repelled the black qi. Ning Fan indifferently scanned the surroundings. This stone chamber that was less than 10 steps away from him actually had more than 1,000 types of defensive formations. Moreover, these formations were interconnected with each other. It was useless to break one or two of them as the formations would be regenerated very soon. Only by breaking all of the formations in one go could he get close to the oxhorned crystals. Ning Fan carefully observed the restrictions in this place. He actually had the feeling of looking at the stars in the sky when he was immortal. He felt that the complexity of the formations was far beyond his expectations. Moreover, if he stared at them for a long time, he would feel dizzy. He could not stare at them for a long time. Otherwise, he would not be able to find a way to break the formations in a short period of time. Ning Fan suppressed the desire to escape from the illusion technique in his heart. He was no longer in a hurry. Thus, he simply sat in a cross-legged position in the stone chamber and slowly studied the formations. 1 day, 2 days, 3 days, 1 month, 2 months, 3 months, spring passed and autumn came. Ning Fan had been sitting in this stone chamber for hundreds of years. One day, he suddenly rose to his feet and struck out thousands of rays of golden light at lightning speed. Amidst countless rumbling sounds, he directly broke the restrictive formation of this place. After that, he raised his hand and polluted the ox-horned crystals with the black chi of his illusion technique. Then, he used the fully innate skill of the illusion technique to directly control the illusion technique in this place. All of a sudden, the eyes of the green-robed old man who was making a vat in the temple suddenly flashed with surprise and fell into a daze. However, he regained his senses a moment later. As for Ning Fan, the scenery in front of him changed and he regained his senses. He was still standing outside the temple, maintaining the posture of looking up at the sky. On the roadside, some people were pointing at him and whispering, "This man is really strange. He has already been looking at the sky for 2 hours. I wonder what he is counting." "Shoo, don't talk nonsense. This man is the tomb guardian of the sacred mountain. The hundreds of years of meditation in the stone chamber was just an illusion. In fact, the outside world was still at the moment when he was affected by the illusion technique." However, when he heard these words that were somewhat similar, Ning Fan suddenly had a bad feeling. Could it be that he still hasn't escaped from the illusion technique? There won't be another landslide in the next moment, right? Fortunately, he really escaped this time because a voice of praise came from inside the temple. "Very well, you've won. Take your servant home." I didn't expect that not only did you escape from this old man's illusion technique, you even reflected it back at me, causing me to lose myself for a moment. You are not bad. Ning Fan let out a long breath and walked into the temple. The temple didn't have the 10,000 yin towers in the illusion technique. This southern medicine temple was just a small shabby temple. There were 2 courtyards with 2 entrances. In the inner courtyard, an old man wearing a green leather coat with a braid was sitting in the courtyard. In front of him was a pedestal. He was holding a mud stick that was as thick as an arm and stacking it into the shape of a vat. As the pedestal rotated, he used a hemp thread that was dipped in mud to grind the surface of the vat bit by bit. Occasionally, he would take a wooden stick and place it on the mouth of the vat to smooth it. In the courtyard, there were many vats that were being dried. There was no rainwater falling into the temple. Further away, there was a small kiln that seemed to be used for burning vats. Outside the kiln, a young man wearing a cow-horned mask was glazing some of the vats. He was the person that Ning Fan had met during the registration in the blood martial arena. "Why you here? Could it be that you followed me here?" The masked young man who seemed to be Xinyu Chun suddenly stood up and stared at Ning Fan with sharp eyes. It was as if he was completely unaware of the confrontation between Ning Fan and the green-robed old man. Ning Fan had already expected that he would meet Xinyu Chun here. Thus, he was not too surprised. He gave Xinyu Chun a deep look but did not say anything. The green-robed old man said, "Little friend Chun, hurry up and do what you need to do. It's none of your business. He came to find me. By the way, let me remind you that the deal between us is that you need to burn 2 million vats for me in your lifetime. Currently, you are still short of 1,999,762 vats. You are not allowed to be lazy." The green-robed old man stared at the masked young man with a stern face. The masked young man looked at the green-robed old man with great fear. Then he looked at Ning Fan again. In the end, he did not say anything and obediently went back to the vats to glaze. The chi that the green-robed old man gave off was very weak. On the surface, he looked like a peddler in the market. However, when he focused his gaze on Ning Fan, he immediately gave Ning Fan a sense of pressure that could make the mountains roar and the seas roar. A second-level quasi-saint who was slightly stronger than Taoist Musong was actually such a terrifying expert. "I know this person. Why is he here?" Ning Fan used the prestige word art to neutralize the aura force of the old man and asked. If he was not mistaken, the reason why Xinyu Chun stayed here to glaze the vats seemed to be some kind of special cultivation. He did not seem to have any evil intentions. "You are here to take your servant away, not to ask for information. It's not good to ask too many questions," the old man said with a frown. "If I don't get to the bottom of this, I won't be at ease with his safety." The meaning behind his words was that he was worried that the old man would plot against Xin Yu-chun. This was also the worst-case scenario. If this second-level quasi-saint old man had the intention to plot against Xin Yu-chun, Ning Fan knew that he would not be able to resist him. You are thinking too much. I have never been one to plot against others. If I want to kill someone, I will just do it. If I want to harm someone, I will just do it. Be it this person, you or that turtle servant of yours, it's all the same. As soon as he finished speaking, the old man pointed at a water vat at the corner of the courtyard impatiently. Then, he continued to make the vat on his own and no longer paid any attention to Ning Fan. Old Wu was inside that water vat. Ning Fan walked closer to take a look. The water vat was half filled with water and a strange-looking big fish was being kept inside. It seemed to be around 5 jin in weight and was rather fat. There was also a turtle the size of a sesame seed inside the vat. The turtle's big eyes were adorable. It was the appearance of Old Wu's 80,000 years old true body that had been shrunk countless times. As for that strange fish, if one takes a closer look, it actually seemed to be an extinct ancient yellow spring whale. It was said that it was a mutated species that lived in the yellow spring. However, it was kept as a pet by the old man and its size seemed to have shrunk countless times. It was not shrunk. Instead, it was big when it was near and small when it was far away. The vat of water seemed to be very close to Ning Fan, but it was actually very, very far away from him. Ning Fan stretched out his hand to touch it. No matter how hard he tried, he could not touch the water in the vat. It was as if the two fishes and the turtle were living in another world, another reincarnation. No wonder Old Wu could not escape. It was because he did not understand reincarnation. There is a trace of reincarnation chi on your body. It's very weak, but it was really comprehended by you. I don't think you need my help to fish out your servant, the old man said without raising his head. I can do it myself. I don't need Senior's help. Fortunately, Ning Fan had just gained his own understanding of reincarnation. Otherwise, he really would not dare to boast to fish out Old Wu. However, he did not expect that Old Wu would actually scold him. His skin is itching for a beating. The world inside the vat. It was an underwater world with no end. Old Wu, who had the body of a turtle, was swimming in the water while cursing and swearing. A yellow spring whale that was as large as the starry sky was following behind him with a pitiful look. This yellow spring whale did not have a high level of intelligence. It could not understand why there would be such a cruel master in this world who would torture such a cute little turtle so cruelly. The chi of this yellow spring whale was extremely strong. It was almost comparable to some weak immortal emperors. Old Wu, who was locked in the vat, initially thought that this yellow spring whale was weak and easy to bully. He wanted to bully it a little, but he did not expect that he would be subdued by it in an instant. Fortunately, Old Wu immediately admitted defeat. This yellow spring whale that did not have a high level of intelligence generously forgave Old Wu and agreed to Old Wu's request, becoming sworn brothers with him. Second brother, are you listening to me? Roar, the yellow spring whale wanted to say this. How pitiful. Second brother, you don't even know how to speak. But fortunately, I know the language of some mutated beasts. I didn't expect that it would come in handy today. Are you pitying me? You're really my good second brother. Roar, 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 roar. I'm not pitying you. We're brothers, and brothers don't need pity. Good brother, then I'll continue. Next, I'm going to make my 1842nd complaint. That damned malefic star didn't come to save me. He must have seen the enemy's strength and abandoned my little life. He has no sense of brotherhood, no sense of justice. If he was in trouble, I would definitely save him at all costs. I'm the most loyal little Wu in the world. I won't be as heartless as that malefic star. Roar, heartless. Next, I'm going to make my 1843rd complaint. That malefic star that plays with fire motes doesn't share with me every time he gets something good. He even steals my treasures. Second brother, tell me, shouldn't a master like this be struck by lightning? Roar, struck by lightning. Next, I'm going to make my 1844th complaint. That damned malefic star actually thinks that I'm Long Yang. This is a great insult to my character. How can I little Wu-Ba like men? I'm the most normal little Wu-Ba in the world. Also, I'm going to make my 1845th complaint. Why did that malefic star do this to me? Second brother, what are you looking at? Second brother? As old Wu-Ba was cursing, he suddenly noticed that there was something wrong with the whale's eyes. With a glance, he saw the reflection of Ning Fan's half-smiling face in the boundless water realm. Immediately, his body trembled. Why did the malefic star come? How much did he hear? Cough, cough, cough. I'm going to make my last complaint. Well, I'm going to make my complaint. I'm going to accuse the malefic star of being elegant, wise, and resourceful. Damn it. I'm not convinced. How can there be such a perfect person in this world? How can ordinary people like us live? Alright, I'm done with my complaint. Now, I'm going to tell you a story. The name of the story is I Have a Good Master. I'll be loyal to him for a lifetime. Before old Wu-Ba could finish his words, he felt his vision turning black. In the next moment he felt like he had left the water realm. His ancient true body that was forcefully restrained to the point where it could not leave finally left. Next to the water tank, Ning Fan shook the water off his hand. A figure that was the size of a sesame seed fell to the ground. In an instant, it enlarged and turned into old Wu-Ba. Don't you think it's too late to change your words after making your complaint? As soon as Ning Fan's words left his mouth, old Wu-Ba felt as if he had been struck by lightning. Damn it. It's still too late to change my words. Master, Old Wu-Ba trembled a little. At the same time, he felt inexplicably touched. He did not really hope that his master would come to save him with that flying sword. He just wanted to scare the green-robed old man and let him know that he had a helper outside. Who would have thought that he would actually beg his master? If he knew that his master was so concerned about his safety, he would not have scolded his master even if his heart was blinded by lard. If you want to complain, wait until we return. There's plenty of time. Don't be anxious. Ning Fan smiled. However, old Wu-Ba had the urge to slap himself to death. The fiend was definitely angry. Anyone who risked his life to save someone would be angry when the other party scolded him. This damned mouth of his, he was done for. Ning Fan was not angry. He was just speechless at old Wu-Ba's boredom. There were more than 1,800 complaints against him. He was really curious about what they were all complaining about. Did he commit such a heinous crime? If he did, it would be really good. As for this old Wu-Ba, he had never expected him to be loyal to him. We'll talk about your matter when we return. Now, be quiet for a while. Seeing that old Wu-Ba still wanted to talk nonsense, Ning Fan was too lazy to listen to him. Instead, he walked to the green-robed old man and cupped his fists to thank him. He thanked the old man for his magnanimity. He did not care about old Wu-Ba's offense and did not kill him. He thanked the old man for his guidance. If Ning Fan could comprehend it carefully, he might be able to comprehend the method to toughen his spirit sense from today's guidance. Then, he would be able to cultivate the true spirit wonder 10,000ly. The old man did not even raise his head, as if he did not see Ning Fan's action. Before Ning Fan could open his mouth, he suddenly said, "Even though you are not the descendant of Tai Chang, you are still fated to meet him. If you pay the price, I can also teach you the complete 8 spirit sense chant. In this way, Tai Chang's divine ability will not decline." Senior is willing to teach me the complete spirit sense chant? Ning Fan's expression changed slightly. May I know what price I have to pay to exchange for the complete spirit sense chant? I'll come another day. Today, I have the soul of the green ox in my body. I only need to focus on making the vat. I won't talk about the deal. I'll talk about this when I'm the yellow ox. As soon as he finished speaking, the old man lowered his head and turned the base of the mud vat. Chapter 1027. After Ning Fan left the Southern Medicine Temple with Old Wu, they found the nearest teleportation formation in the relay station and directly teleported to an extremely lively place in the north of Lu Li City, the slave market. The people of Debay maintained the slavery system. Slaves were usually criminals who could be brought to the market to be traded. The status of a slave was even lower than that of an external cultivator. Ning Fan had seen the strict hierarchy of the people of Great Bay. Thus, he was not surprised that the slave market in this place was flourishing. The reason he had come here was because this was the place where Duo Lan was looking for a place to stay. Generally speaking, most of the participants who came to Lioli City to participate in the second round would stay in the guest houses specially prepared by Lioli City. Of course, there were also a few who preferred to travel alone and settled down in Lioli City, but this was also within the tacit approval of Lioli City. Duo Lan did not choose to stay in the guest house of Lioli City. Instead, she chose this place. Ning Fan could vaguely guess the reason behind it. It was most likely related to the trouble that Duo Lan had encountered. Chu Lai, Sinner Luo Shi, greets young master. I didn't expect that young lord would also come to Lioli City to watch the second round of the mausoleum seizing. Luo Shi originally thought that with young lord's status, he would directly participate in the third round. But this is also good. In Lioli City, there is a matter that requires young lord's decision. Young lord, please help us in Chu Lai. Did something happen to the disciples in Lioli City? Being the saintess of Chu Lai was really tiring. The benefits of being a saintess were gone, and she could not even cultivate on the holy mountain. Yet, she still had to run around for the sake of Chu Lai's lineage. If it was him, he would probably only take care of himself and not care about those unrelated people. Kindness actually existed in this woman's bones. It was different from the words of those Buddhas. This kind of kindness that came from the heart was closer to the Buddhist Dharma. Unfortunately, the waters of this Lioli City are too deep. There are plenty of old monsters who can suppress me with just a wave of their hands. Moreover, my identity as an external cultivator is awkward. On the other hand, Duo Lan's identity as the saintess is much easier for her to solve all kinds of problems in this place. It's much better than me coming out personally, Ning Fan thought to himself. Old Wu, who was following Ning Fan, cautiously shuddered when he saw Ning Fan bringing him to the slave market. This malefic star? Could it be that this malefic star had given up on him and was going to sell him out? He couldn't be blamed. It was rare for the fiend to show kindness and disregard the danger to save him. Yet, he was actually criticizing the fiend behind his back. What kind of behavior was this? This was an act of biting the hand that fed them. This was the behavior of a beast. Old Wu couldn't help but blame himself. For the first time in his life, he felt sorry for Ning Fan and ashamed, of course. He was more worried that if Ning Fan really sold him out, then he would suffer a great loss. Ning Fan was the turning point of his bad luck. Only by following Ning Fan could he cultivate his dark luck cultivation method to the extreme and touch the limits of the Great Tao. That was why he was reluctant to leave Ning Fan and follow another master whom he did not know at all. He had also heard that the slaves sold to the Lioli City usually did not have good endings. The female slaves could be ordered around, tortured, rewarded, and played with as they pleased. The male slaves who were good-looking would have the same ending as the female slaves. Those who were not good-looking would be directly sent to the dark side of the Lioli City, the blood martial arena. They would fight to the death and be entertained by those in power. Wu Laoba touched his big face and thought that he was quite handsome. It would be fine if he were to be sent to the blood warrior arena to fight to the death. However, if some old woman took a fancy to his good looks and brought him home to ravage him, it would be a great insult to his character. No, I can't let this fiend sell me out. Thump. Old Wu knelt down in front of Ning Fan skillfully. Ning Fan frowned, wondering what this old Wu is trying to do again. He asked, "What are you doing?" "It's absolutely impossible for you to avoid punishment just by kneeling down. Your behavior today is a little too much. The waters of the Lioli City are too deep. I don't care if you cause trouble in other places. Even if there is trouble, you have the ability to settle it. However, this place is different. If something happens again, I don't have the confidence to save you a second time." Even though this fiend's tone was cold, every word he said was concerned about him. He was advising him not to cause trouble. He was worried about his safety. Old Wu could not help but feel a little pleased. The more he thought about it, the more he felt that Ning Fan was actually a kind and humane person despite his usual coldness. He was truly a good master that was hard to come by. Feeling guilty, he became even more reluctant to leave Ning Fan. His beady eyes rolled around and he put on a pitiful expression and pleaded, "If Master wants to punish little eight will definitely not complain. However, I hope that Master will not sell little eight to other people as a slave no matter what. Little eight will be Master's servant in life and Master's ghost in death. My loyalty will never change. The sun and moon can be my witness. I will never be willing to be sold to other masters. Little eight can't do that? Serve people with looks?" Ning Fan was stunned. Then he stared at Old Wu speechlessly. With his appearance, if he really becomes a slave, he probably won't have the chance to serve people with looks. He will be directly sent to the Blood Warrior Arena to die. The waters of the Blood Warrior Arena were also very deep. According to the information given by the 3 prodigies of the Sea Sorcerer clan, there seemed to be immortal venerables who had died in battle in that arena. Of course, it was something that happened a long time ago. The nature of the Blood Warrior ranking battle was different from the second round of the Mausoleum seizing battle. Ning Fan was determined to get the spring water of the South Sea. As for the innate soul-nourishing spiritual medicine in the Blood Warrior arena, he would take it if he could. If he couldn't, he would retreat unscathed. After all, the great despicable clan had a vast territory and abundant resources. He could also find clues about the innate soul-nourishing spiritual medicine in other places. It was not worth the risk. Seeing that Ning Fan seemed to be thinking about something, Old Wu's heart quivered. He thought that Ning Fan was really thinking about selling him. Instantly, he felt a little anxious. Being anxious, he actually shouted loudly, unlike his usual self, "Fiend, even if you want to sell me, you should wait until I have returned the favor. Even though I, Old Wu, have a bad character, I never owe anyone a favor. Since you have saved me once, I must return the favor." Some passers-by who did not know the truth immediately pointed their fingers in that direction. A handsome young man and an ugly old man's love and hatred. This kind of long-yang drama with a huge change in appearance was rarely seen even in Lioli City, where male culture was flourishing. It was really interesting. Even though the voices of those discussions were not loud, how could Ning Fan not hear them with his hearing ability? Instantly, his face turned a little pale. This Old Wu really knows how to cause trouble for me. However, it was rare for him to speak like a human. Ning Fan had a whole new level of respect for him. Never owing anyone a favor, That's really Old Wu's character. In the past, the old devil had accidentally saved him once. Therefore, he must repay the old devil's favor. With his incomparably stubborn character, being able to do this meant that he would definitely return the favor. At least, saving this person was not in vain. "Don't worry. You and I are master and servant. I won't sell you out. However, you have just scolded me before. Now, you are shouting at me so loudly. Is it really all right?" Ning Fan smiled faintly. Old Wu suddenly felt a chill going straight to his head. Damn it. I forgot the terror of this fiend in a moment of excitement. If there was a day in this fiend's life where he would show some humanity, it would definitely be today. However, the other life of this fiend was absolutely inhumane. He would kill people at the slightest discord. How dare he talk to this fiend like this? Master, I was wrong, I was wrong, I was wrong. If you are wrong, you will be punished. I will give you some punishment later. For now, stand up, shut your mouth and follow me. Don't cause any more commotion. Finished speaking, Ning Fan directly walked towards a certain direction in the slave market. As soon as Ning Fan turned around, Old Wu's mournful and timid face immediately turned into a wretched smile. He stood up and patted his knees before jogging to catch up with Ning Fan. Inwardly, he felt proud of himself. Pretending to be timid in front of the fiend indeed could win the fiend's sympathy. He would never admit that he was really afraid of Ning Fan from the bottom of his heart. I'm selling slaves. A hybrid between a human and a devil beast in the Tri-Flame Fire domain. A half-demon slave for 300 silver coins. A beautiful female puppet with primordial een is only sold for 800 silver coins. A medicine slave with a water soul is sold for 30 gold coins. A shape-shifted devil beast with a divine transformation realm cultivation base is sold for 100 gold coins. The place was filled with all kinds of shouts. There were also the joyful laughter of the buyers and the cries of some slaves. Occasionally, some slaves who were disobedient would be whipped by their masters. There were even some female puppets who were stripped clean and displayed in front of the crowd without any dignity at all. Ning Fan frowned and hurriedly walked past the crowd. He was not interested in the slave market at all. In fact, there were not many cries in this place. Instead, there were more laughter and chatter. There were also a lot of sunlight. However, Ning Fan had a feeling that this place was darker than the blood martial arena. However, if he were to think about it carefully, he would realize that it was not just Lioli City that had this kind of darkness. The cultivation world also had this kind of dark side. This was not the atmosphere of the cultivation world that he liked. However, it was the reality that he was powerless to change. In the face of such a reality, immortal sovereign Zido could create peace and prosperity in the Zido immortal domain with his own strength while he could only barely protect himself in this cultivation world. There is nothing in this world that is impossible. It just depends on whether you are willing to do it or not. It's ridiculous for an ordinary young man to try to change the world. However, if it's me, I can truly change everything in this world. Do you have any ideals in your heart? While he was smiling bitterly in the crowd, he suddenly thought of immortal sovereign Zido's question. However, it was just a thought. Currently, he was powerless to do anything. He had even exhausted all of his strength to protect the people around him. When the dark race bullied him, he could not fight back in a dignified manner. When Great Emperor Lu Tuo of the Great Humble bullied him, he could only fight back a little. He did not dare to go all the way to Great Emperor Lu Tuo's dojo. What he lacked was not courage but strength. That sense armor art is very beneficial for me to improve my strength. Perhaps, I'll have to wait for the yellow ox soul of that old man from the Southern Medicine Temple to make a deal with him. Green ox soul, yellow ox soul. Thinking of this, Ning Fan finally had the heart to ask Old Wu about the whole process of his predicament. Old Wu naturally added details to the story and told Ning Fan about what happened to him today. Originally, he also wanted to hide the matter about the Emperor Jade set from Ning Fan. However, due to the guilt in his heart, he gritted his teeth and told Ning Fan about it. It was like this. Last time, Old Wu accidentally snatched a 12 Nirvana post-celestial magic treasure from the hands of an unlucky fellow from the Great Humble clan, the Emperor Jade Luck Crown. In fact, this crown was not a single magic treasure. Instead, it was a set of magic treasures. The set consisted of 4 parts, which were the crown, the armor, the shoes, and the sword. The more parts that were worn, the greater the increase in luck. If all of them were worn, it would almost be comparable to a mid-grade innate magic treasure. It was a magic treasure that was highly recommended by Old Wu's master in his notes. His desire for this treasure was even greater than the world-flooded bottle. After all, it was a magic treasure that could improve the strength of the Black Fate sect. To the cultivators of the Black Fate sect, once all of them were gathered, it would be a supreme defensive treasure. After Old Wu obtained the Emperor Jade Luck Crown from the Great Humble clan, his strength had greatly improved. Naturally, he desired to gather the other 3 parts of the set. According to Old Wu's speculation, one of the parts of the set was lost in the Great Humble clan. It was highly possible that the other parts were in the Great Humble clan. Thus, he took out the treasure-seeking tortoise and searched for it day and night. Unexpectedly, he really found a trace of it from the direction of Lioli City. That trace was from the old man from the Southern Medicine Temple. He probably had the second Emperor Jade Luck set. In other words, you provoked that old man for the second Emperor Jade Luck armor? Ning Fan asked. If it wasn't because this treasure is too important to us cultivators of the Black Fate sect, Little 8 wouldn't be so persistent in searching for it. Little 8 can only blame the fact that the waters of Lioli City are too deep. Little 8 would never have thought that a shabby old man who makes vats would actually be such a terrifying expert. It's funny that little 8 even inquired about him in advance. That old man's surname is Nyo, and he doesn't have any background in Liuli City. He is just a traveling merchant who often appears in various places of the Great Humble Clan. He makes vats for the government temples, and he usually does official work. Sometimes, he would also sell some in the markets of various places. Old Wu rambled and told him the information that he had heard in advance. He was rather cautious. Before he went to provoke the old man from the Southern Medicine Temple, he had even inquired about a lot of information. Unfortunately, if a second-level quasi-saint has the intention to hide, the information of an ordinary person could be exposed. This old Wu was really careless because his life had been smooth sailing recently. That old man's surname is Nyo, right? Moreover, he mentioned the soul of the green ox and the soul of the yellow ox. I remember Zhang Yu mentioning that the reason why she formed a karmic connection with the Hundred Flowers Emperor was because she was severely injured by an ox spirit. Back then, she was a peak immortal emperor realm cultivator. The number of ox spirits that could injure her could be counted with one's fingers. Could it be that she was referring to this man? If that's the case, would the Hundred Flowers Emperor be able to rescue Zhang Yu from the hands of such a powerful ox spirit? What was the Hundred Flowers Emperor's cultivation base? No matter how great her innate talent in the Tao of Formations was, how could she save someone from the hands of a second-level quasi-saint? Or could it be that the ox spirit did not really have the intention to kill Zhang Yu and let her go? Or could it be that the Hundred Flowers Emperor was hiding something else? Or maybe it was both of them? Ning Fan felt a headache coming on. Ever since he entered the Hundred Flowers Peak and arrived at Liuli City, he had already encountered many unexplainable puzzles. Besides, there was also the strange behavior of Xin Yu Chun and the strange words of the woman who claimed to be Ah Feng of Xiufeng. He was not stupid, but he did not like to deceive others. It was his first time encountering such a brain-burning situation. Just as he was pondering, there was suddenly a commotion in front of him. The crowd formed a large circle as if something had happened. Ning Fan went closer to take a look, and his eyes immediately turned cold. It was a slave who wanted to escape but was whipped by his master in public. That slave was a burly man with a strong cultivation base at the early Shidong Void Realm. However, because he was restricted by the Xinghuan, he could only display the cultivation base of the first step of the Gold Core Realm. That burly man's body was covered with wounds. Some of them were old and some were new. It was obvious that he had been tortured countless times. However, his eyes did not have the self-esteem of a slave. Instead, they were filled with anger and unwillingness. That burly man was wearing the attire of an external cultivator. He was not a mausoleum guardian of the sacred mountain but an external cultivator. This person must be one of the old monsters of the eastern sky who entered the Supreme Pill Sacred region with Ning Fan. According to the passers-by, after this person's cultivation base was sealed, he came to Liuli City and seemed to have offended one of the aristocrats here. Then, he was captured and tortured as a slave and sold. If this person's cultivation base was at its peak, it would be impossible for him to be in such dire straits with the help of the Shidong Void Realm. However, the restrictions of the Xinghuan on external cultivators were too great. As a result, he was powerless to resist when faced with the aristocrats who did not have a high cultivation base and was captured alive. Old monster Shidong Void Realm was definitely a powerful figure in the eastern sky. However, in this place, he was actually treated as a slave and beaten. How could he be willing to accept this? This uncle is so pitiful. A child by the roadside felt a little reluctant, but his parents shook their heads and said, "Son, you don't have to pity this person. He is just a lowly external cultivator. Moreover, he has offended the Liu clan, which is one of the top 10 aristocrats in Liuli City. The aristocrats are existences higher than us commoners, let alone the 10 noble families. Don't forget that offending the aristocrats is one of the 12 prohibitions against external cultivators. No one can save him. The Liu clan is the descendant of the same clan as Emperor Luotua. This person has offended the Liu clan. Even if he were to be sold, no one would dare to buy him. Some passers-by sighed. If it's not like this, I would like to spend some money to buy this person and set him free. It can also be considered as doing a good deed. There was no lack of kind-hearted people. However, no one dared to save this burly man who had committed such a great crime. Who told you to run? How dare you run? A mere external cultivator slave actually dares to run away from me, Lu Lao-san? I'm not going to sell you anymore. I'm going to beat you to death today and let the people of Lioli City have a taste of my, Lu Lao-san's, methods. External cultivators are just pigs and dogs. Killing you is just a small matter. A herdsman with a gloomy appearance scolded while waving a whip that was flashing with lightning. He desperately whipped the external cultivator. He seemed to be called Lu Lao-san and was a member of the Lioli City's aristocratic Lu clan. As for that external cultivator, perhaps it was because his magic power had been exhausted, he could only lie on the ground like a dog and let Lu Lao-san beat him. Blood and pus flowed all over the ground, but his eyes were still wide open in anger as he screamed. What dogs hit aristocracy, what dogs hit Lu clan? I, Li Ying, refuse to accept this. I merely didn't give way to that Lu clan's young master and he heavily injured me. I was just retaliating. What right do you have to say that I violated the 12 prohibitions and not pursue the matter of that Lu clan's young master injuring me? I refuse to accept this. I am the Eastern Heaven Immortal World's divine hero Star Lord. I am the #1 of the young generation in Eastern Heaven 4 million years ago. I am a cultivator, Li Ying, not a dog. What a joke that Lu clan's young master even poisoned me with the soul-decaying absolute poison. He wanted to use this poison to devour my mind and refine me into a puppet. Ha, don't even think about it. Even if I, Li Ying, die, I will never die with the identity of a slave or a puppet. Even if I die, I will bring you along with me. That external cultivator suddenly leaped up from the ground with unknown strength. He broke free from the shackles and pounced towards Lu Lao-san. With his eyes turning red, that external cultivator chose to self-detonate. He chose to use his life to regain the last bit of his dignity. Ning Fan's eyes flashed with cold light. He flipped his hand, wanting to save him. However, a light palm suddenly landed on his shoulder and pulled hard. A tremendous force directly pulled him back a few steps, making it too late for him to save that external cultivator. With a loud bang, Li Ying's body exploded into a bloody mess. As for Lu Lao-san who was under him, he was also blasted to death. Fortunately, Li Ying's cultivation base was restricted. Moreover, because his magic power had been exhausted, the power of his self-detonation was extremely limited. It only killed Lu Lao-san alone. Otherwise, if the shockwave spread out, countless civilians would have died. The people who gathered in the area immediately scattered away in fright. The slave market, which was originally bustling with noise, instantly became so quiet that only Ning Fan, Wu Lao-san and the man who had placed his palm on Ning Fan's shoulder were left. That was a young man who reeked of blood. His strength was quite profound. He had a cultivation base that was half-step immortal venerable realm. However, according to Ning Fan's estimation, the strength of that palm was probably even stronger than some first tribulation immortal venerables. This person seemed to have a rather terrifying attainment in the Tao of body refinement. Because of your interference, 2 lives have been lost. Ning Fan said coldly. The golden light around his body trembled, directly forcing that man to take a few steps back. He was a little shocked. According to his information, Ning Fan's cultivation base should have been sealed. How could he have the strength to force me to retreat when I attacked him with all my might? This person doesn't seem to be simple. The man's eyes were filled with dread. However, after the dread subsided, it was filled with joy that was close to madness. Not simple is even better. Only the blood of such a person is more qualified to prove his existence. What an excellent prey! My master really did not lie to me. You are an external cultivator who also has a strong desire to kill. Would you care about the lives of 2 mortals? Don't joke around. You should be the same as me. Both of us only pursue extreme killing, right? We are the same kind of people. Therefore you must die. In the second round of the mausoleum seizing competition, I will wait for you to fight me. Don't disappoint me when the time comes." To Ning Fan's words, the man could only give an indifferent answer. His body swayed and turned into a ray of blood light, disappearing on the spot. It was as if he could slightly ignore the forbidden power of the Great Humble Clan and use some escape techniques. He does have some skills. At the moment when he left, there was a voice that sounded like a whisper in Ning Fan's ear. Ning Fan's eyes suddenly turned cold. Then he slowly closed his eyes. His heart felt a little suffocated and annoyed. There was also a kind of unspeakable anger that could not be vented. Just like what that man had said, he, Ning Fan, the great devil Lord Ning, was also someone who had walked out of a mountain of corpses and a sea of blood. Why would he care so much about other people's lives? Indeed, he did not care about Lu Laosan's life. However, he was angry about Li Ying's self-detonation. In the past, he only heard that external cultivators lived a difficult life in the Great Humble Clan. However, because of his outstanding strength and the many fortuitous encounters he had, he rarely received unfair treatment because of his identity as an external cultivator. There was one rare occasion which was during the first round of the mausoleum seizing competition. He managed to resolve the situation with his own means and did not suffer any losses. However, Li Ying was not as lucky as him. The only way he could resist the people of the Great Humble Clan was by self-detonation. Damn it! So what if I'm an external cultivator? Can I be humiliated like a dog by others? Aren't the people of the Great Humble Clan born with a medicine soul? Why are they superior to others? Why do they have to kill us, external cultivators, like dogs? Damn it! I can't tolerate this. It's fine if they fight openly on the path of cultivation, but they actually humiliate others like this. How hateful! Old Wu Ba roared loudly. After he finished shouting, his voice suddenly became softer. It's all that man's fault for sneaking an attack on me and tying me up with this blood rope. Otherwise, I certainly would have been able to save him in time. Damn it! What the hell is this rope? The more I struggle, the tighter it gets. The person who attacked me doesn't seem to be an immortal venerable of the ancient times. I didn't expect him to have such abilities. Old Wu Ba's body was actually tied up by a blood rope without him noticing. He was tied up like a dumpling and only managed to break free with great difficulty. It was also the means of that bloody young man. This person is called Li Ying, right? He died because of me. Ning Fan said after a moment of silence. Old Wu Ba was instantly confused. Master, why did you do this? Although it's a pity that Li Ying died, it's considered a common thing in the cultivation world. Little Eight vented his anger and cried out for this person. It's enough to repay the kindness of meeting him by chance. Master doesn't need to take responsibility for this person's death. Ning Fan, however, shook his head. No. The reason why this person died was actually arranged by someone. It was a show of strength. If I'm not wrong, that person just now wanted to give me a warning with this scene. He told me that external cultivators are just external cultivators. In his eyes, external cultivators are just like pigs and dogs. It's easy for him to kill them. Ning Fan did not believe that this was a coincidence. Otherwise, how could that bloody young man appear here coincidentally and point out his name? That whisper before he left was undoubtedly a provocation. My master, Lu Tua, asked me to take your life in the second round of the mausoleum seizing. You're dead for sure. Is that bloody young man the disciple of great Emperor Lu Tua? If you want to take my life in the second round of the mausoleum seizing, then bring it on. Ning Fan waved his sleeve. A ray of purplish-black spiritual light suddenly flew out from his sleeve. It turned into a spirit wheel and sucked at the place where the burly outer cultivator self-destructed. After that, Ning Fan kept the spirit wheel. This is the ancient demon spirit wheel. What did Master do? Old Wu Ba was curious about the ancient demon spirit wheel even with his experience. Nothing. Let's go. Ning Fan was naturally too lazy to explain to Old Wu Ba. He used the spirit wheel to collect Li Ying's soul. The death of an immortal was like the dissipation of one's consciousness. It was supposed to be a certain death. However, the Fuli spirit will had the miraculous effect of collecting the souls of those cultivators who were unwilling to submit even in death. If Ning Fan's cultivation base was strong enough one day, he could even use the Fuli spirit wheel to let those cultivators who were unwilling to submit enter the cycle of samsara and reincarnate as Fuli. Duo Lan stayed in an old house in the slave market. There was a plaque hanging on the old house with the words Prison 47 written in large characters. In the old mansion, there were some people who were wearing shackles on their hands and legs. When Ning Fan and old Wu Bar arrived, there were immediately two delicate maidservants who were dragging the shackles on their feet to welcome them. Are you the powerful outer cultivator who saved the saintess? Please accept a bow from me. The two maidservants actually shed tears of gratitude. They knelt for a long time and did not get up. Ning Fan was slightly startled. He nodded and waved his sleeves to help the two maidservants up. He thought to himself, Duo Lan's explanation of their relationship is that of a benefactor. Well, it's not surprising since the relationship between master and servant cannot be revealed. These two maidservants who were wearing shackles seemed to have some relation with Duo Lan in terms of their bloodline. Could they be the disciples of Chu Lai's lineage? Moreover, they are most likely the kind of people who have some degree of kinship. You're tuning in to the Passion Pages YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.